They said she was a mistake the moment the moon revealed her. In front of 1,000 warriors, the most feared alpha in the north looked his fated mate in the eyes and told the world he would rather die than claim her. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She walked into the blizzard barefoot, and the kingdom laughed. 3 winters later, that same kingdom was burning, and the only person who could save it was the Omega they threw away. Stay until the end. Bossar, hit that like, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. Because what she does to them, you won't believe. The wind off the Black Spine Mountains had teeth that night, and everybody in Hollowreach could feel them through the stone walls of the Great Hall. Lyra Ashen felt them worse than most. She was standing behind a pillar near the kitchens, wearing the plain gray wool of a hall healer, hands tucked inside her sleeves so nobody would see them shake. She wasn't supposed to be in the Great Hall during a claiming feast. Healers stayed in the infirmary unless somebody was bleeding. That was the rule. She'd memorized every rule in Hollowreach the way some girls memorized love songs, because rules were the only thing standing between her and the frozen ditch outside the gates. But Marin had begged her. Marin, the cook's daughter, was 14 and half in love with one of the young warriors getting promoted tonight, and she'd cried until Lyra agreed to come watch with her from the servants' alcove, just for a minute, just long enough to see him stand up when the Alpha called his name. "He's going to look right at me, Lyra, I know he is," Marin whispered. She smelled like bread and onion soup and the lavender oil Lyra kept in the infirmary. "He said he would." "He's going to look at the Alpha," Lyra whispered back. "Everybody looks at the Alpha. You keep your head down." "You never keep your head down." "I always keep my head down." "You're looking right now." Lyra had not realized she was, but she was. Her eyes had drifted, the way eyes did, to the high table at the end of the hall. Kael Draven sat at its center. She had seen him before, of course. Everyone in Hollowreach had seen Alpha Kael Draven at least once in their lives, whether they wanted to or not. He rode through the main road twice a year at the change of seasons, and the whole town came out to watch him pass. He was tall, even sitting down. Black hair cut short against the scalp, a jaw that looked like somebody had broken it once and reset it crooked, and a scar that ran from the edge of his left eyebrow down to the corner of his mouth, like a river cutting a cliff. He was 31 years old. He had ruled the Black Spine territory for 9 of those years. He had killed, by the count of the ballad singers, 104 men with his own hands, not counting the wolves. He was not looking at anyone in the hall. He was staring down at his wine cup like it had personally offended him. "Who's the woman?" Marin whispered. The woman was Seraphine Volk. Everyone in the north knew who Seraphine Volk was. Daughter of the richest cattle lord east of the mountains, Betaborn, with hair the color of winter wheat and a laugh that carried across frozen lakes. She had been Kael Draven's intended since they were both 17 years old. Everyone had assumed they would be mated by 20. Everyone had been waiting 9 years for the announcement. Instead, she sat next to him at every feast, smiled at every lord, and slept, if the laundresses were to be believed, and laundresses were always to be believed, in his bed anyway. Tonight she was wearing red, deep red, like a wound. "She looks like she owns him," Marin said. "Don't say that out loud." "Why? Everybody says it. Everybody is stupid. Move back, your head's in the light." Marin shuffled back into the shadow of the pillar. The herald at the front of the hall was still droning through the names of warriors being raised to captain tonight. It was the bone moon, when the winter stores were counted, and the year's loyal men were rewarded. And if the omens called for it, a pack alpha might finally declare his chosen mate. Lyra had healed 2 of these warriors in the last year. One had a spear scar on his thigh she'd stitched herself. The other had come to her with a fever so bad his mother had given him up for dead, and she'd sat by his cot for 3 nights straight and fed him willow bark and broth until the fever broke at dawn. Neither of them knew her name. She didn't take it personally. Healers in Hollowreach were like the stones in the wall. Nobody thanked the stones. The stones were just supposed to hold. "Marin?" Lyra whispered. "I'm leaving. Mother Cree will kill me if I'm not back before the last course." "1 more minute." "Marin?" And then it happened. It started small, a prickle at the back of her neck, like somebody had opened a door behind her. Then warmth. Not hot, just warm, like standing near the hearth after coming in from the snow. Then her heart stuttered. Not skipped, stuttered. 3 uneven beats in a row, like a horse losing its footing on ice. She pressed her hand flat to the stone pillar to hold herself up. Lyra? Marin was looking at her now, instead of at the warriors. Lyra, you're white. I'm fine. You're not fine. Go back to the kitchen. Lyra, your eyes. The warmth turned to heat. The heat turned to pressure. She could feel it rolling out from the center of her chest, spreading down into her fingers, up into her throat, behind her eyes. Her knees almost went. She grabbed the pillar with both hands now. At the high table, Kyle Draven had gone completely still. His wine cup was halfway to his mouth. He did not move it. He did not move at all. He just sat there, eyes closed, nostrils flaring a fraction wider with each slow breath, like a wolf that has caught a scent on the wind and is trying to decide whether it is prey or predator. Then he opened his eyes, and Lyra, from 70 feet away in the shadow of a pillar, felt them land on her. Nobody else in the hall had noticed yet, but Seraphine Volk noticed him noticing. Seraphine turned her head, followed his gaze, and her beautiful face went through 3 expressions in about 1 second. Confusion, then understanding, then something that wasn't quite hate yet but was going to be, very soon. Get up, Kyle said. His voice wasn't loud. He didn't need it loud. The Great Hall of Hollowreach had been built to carry an alpha's voice, and his voice carried. The herald stopped mid-sentence. Every warrior at the long tables turned. Every noble lady stopped with a piece of roast on her fork. Every servant froze in place like children playing statue. I said get up, Kyle said, louder this time, and now he was standing. The Omega in the pillars, stand out where I can see you. Marin made a small sound and pressed both hands to her mouth. Lyra did not move. She could not move. Her body had forgotten how legs worked. Her bond mark, the place at the base of her neck where the mate bond would have sat, if she'd been the kind of Omega anybody ever expected to have one, was burning. Not hot. Burning. The way skin burns when you hold it too close to a candle, right before it blisters, UKL said, and now his eyes had found her exactly, and she understood that he had not been guessing. Come forward. Mother Cree appeared next to her like a ghost materializing out of flower dust. Mother Cree was 68, half-blind in one eye, and the head healer of Hollowreach. She had taken Lyra in when Lyra was 9 years old and starving in a drainage ditch and had never once asked her what her last name used to be. Go, Mother Cree whispered, her old hand tight as iron on Lyra's wrist. Girl, go. Don't keep him waiting. Mother, walk. Lyra walked. The Great Hall of Hollowreach was 80 paces long. She counted every one of them. Her boots were old leather, worn at the heel, and they made a soft, wet sound on the flagstones because the floor had been mopped an hour ago and the water hadn't dried. Every eye in the hall was on her. Warriors, nobles, servants, the priests from the old shrine in the corner, the traveling merchants up from the south who'd come for the feast, all of them looking at the gray wool dress, the mud on the hem, the plain brown hair she'd tied back with a bit of kitchen twine because her only ribbon had snapped last week. She stopped 10 paces from the high table. Kyle Draven looked down at her. This close, she could see that his eyes were not black like everybody said. They were a very dark brown, almost the color of wet bark, and there were tired lines at the corners of them that she hadn't expected. He was breathing too fast. His pulse was visible in the side of his throat. He was feeling it too then. The pull. The thing that Omegas in the old songs called the calling and Alphas called something less polite. Their bond was real. It had struck them both at the same moment, across a crowded hall, through every wall of control he had built for himself. And he had felt it, and he knew. She watched him realize it. She watched his face close. What is your name? He said. Lyra, my lord. Lyra what? She hesitated. It was the wrong thing to do. She saw him note it. Ashen, she said. My lord. A muscle moved in his jaw. Ashen was not a family name. It was what they called children who turned up at the Hollowreach gates without parents, pulled out of the ash of whatever village had burned that year. Raiders came across the Black Spine passes almost every summer. There were a lot of Ashens in the north. It was the name the stones wore. Who is her alpha? Kyle said to the hall in general. No alpha, my lord, said Mother Cree, who had followed Lyra down the length of the hall with the slow, stubborn courage of very old women. She came to us at 9. I took her in. She answers to the infirmary. Rank? Omega, my lord. Mother Kree's voice did not shake. Presented at 14, unbonded. Unclaimed for 7 years? Kael said. Unclaimed, my lord. Someone at the lord's tables laughed. It was not a kind laugh. Lyra did not turn to see who it was. She had a feeling she knew. Look at me, Kael said to her. She looked at him, and that was when Seraphine Volk stood up. Kael, Seraphine said. Not my lord, not Alpha. Kael, like they were alone in a bedroom. Sit down. This is embarrassing. Seraphine, Kael said without taking his eyes off Lyra. Sit down yourself. Is this a joke? Seraphine's voice was climbing. This kitchen girl? You can't seriously be... I said sit down. She sat, but her hands on the tablecloth were 2 white fists. Kael came down off the dais. He came down slowly. 3 steps. Each one made the floor feel smaller. When he reached the bottom and stood in front of Lyra, she had to tilt her head back to keep her eyes on his, and every Omega instinct in her body was screaming at her to lower her gaze, to bare her throat, to apologize for existing. She didn't. She had promised herself when she was 10 years old, in a ditch, covered in her mother's blood, that she would never again lower her eyes for anybody who could hurt her. It had never been a harder promise to keep than it was right now. Do you know who I am? He said. It wasn't a question. It was a test. Yes, my lord. Say it. Alpha Kael Draven of the Black Spine. And do you know what's happening right now? Her throat went dry. She licked her bottom lip. She watched him watch her do it. Yes, my lord. Say it. She had to stop and swallow. The bond, my lord. Louder, for the hall. She hated him, suddenly and completely, a hate so clean it felt almost like cold water. He was going to make her say it in front of 1,000 people. He had already decided what he was going to do, and he was going to make her speak the words that would humiliate her first, because he was the kind of man who liked to be sure. The mate bond, my lord, she said, loud enough to reach the back of the hall. Between you and me. A sound went through the hall. It was not a murmur. It was closer to a hiss, 1,000 held breaths escaping at once. Somebody dropped a cup. Somebody else laughed, and then got hit and stopped. Kael Draven's hand came up. She thought, for a single cracked second, that he was going to touch her cheek. He did not. He brought his hand up between them, palm down, and held it flat in the air like a man weighing something on a scale. No, he said. Just that. One word. The hall went silent, the way a forest goes silent when a predator walks through. My lord, Mother Kree began. No, Kael said again, louder. I reject the bond. Lyra's knees did go then, just slightly, just a hitch. She caught herself before anyone saw, or she thought she did. She was never sure, afterward. By the blood of the Draven line, Kael said, and now his voice was the voice he used on the parade grounds, the voice that had broken men down into boys and boys down into corpses. And by the right of an alpha of the Black Spine, I reject this mating. The Omega before me is not my mate. The bond is false. The bond is void. Let no one in this hall or in this territory speak of her as mine, or I will consider it treason. You can't reject a fated bond, said one of the old priests from the shrine corner, his voice cracked. My lord, it isn't done. The blood does what I tell it to do. My lord, there will be consequences. Then I will pay them, alone. He turned his head, just enough to catch Seraphine out of the corner of his eye. I know who my mate is. I have known since I was 17 years old. I have not changed my mind in the last... He glanced at Lyra again, and the disgust in his eyes was so sudden and so carefully manufactured that Lyra knew, absolutely knew, that he was pushing it. In the last hour. Kael, Seraphine said, soft now, almost laughing. Oh, Kael. Sit, he said to her again, and she sat, smiling. He turned back to Lyra. You will leave Hollow Reach tonight, he said. Quiet, almost gentle. That was almost the worst part. You'll take the south road. You will not come back. If I find you within the walls of this city at dawn, or in any settlement of mine within the week, I will have you dragged out. Do you understand me?" She could not speak. Her tongue felt like leather. "Do you understand me?" "Yes," she said. "My lord." "Say it properly." "I understand you, my lord." "Good." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell him. Leather and iron, and something underneath that was clean and green and alive. Something that every cell in her body recognized as home, and she hated her body for recognizing it. "Listen to me, girl. I don't know what you are. I don't know how a kitchen Omega reached across a hall and triggered a calling on an Alpha of the Draven line. But whatever you aren't it to me. You are an accident. Do you hear me? You are a mistake of the blood. You are nothing." "Yes, my lord. Louder. I want them to hear you agree." She almost broke then. She almost, for half a heartbeat, let the tears come. She felt them pushing up under her eyes like a spring under stone. She breathed in through her nose and held it and counted. 1, 2, 3. The way Mother Cree had taught her to count when a patient died and the family was screaming, and she still had 6 more patients in the ward who needed her not to fall apart. She opened her eyes. "I agree, my lord," she said, and her voice did not shake. "I am nothing." Something flickered in his face when she said it. Something that almost looked like he hadn't expected her to get the words out. It was gone before she could be sure. He stepped back. "Garm," he said. Garm was the captain of his personal guard, a beta with a dent in his skull from an old axe wound. Garm came down off the dais. "Escort her to the south gate. Make sure she goes through. Tell the night watch that if she tries to come back, they bar her." "Alone, my lord?" Garm said. Not objecting, just checking. "It's 3 days of open road to the next village. The weather—" "Do I look like I care about the weather, Garm?" "No, my lord." "Move." Garm took Lyra's elbow. His hand was not rough. He was not a cruel man, Garm. He had been one of the men she'd stitched up last spring, a cut on his forearm from a training accident, and he'd held still for her like a good patient and said, "Thank you, healer," at the end. He did not look at her now as he turned her toward the doors. They were halfway down the length of the hall when Seraphine Volk laughed. It was a small laugh, almost private, the kind of laugh a woman gives when she's just been handed something she's wanted for a very long time. But the hall was silent enough that it carried, and it was the last sound Lyra heard as the great doors swung open and the black spine wind came howling in across the flagstones and took her out into the snow. She did not cry. Garm walked her to the south gate without speaking. The snow was coming sideways now. Her gray wool was too thin. She had not been allowed to stop at the infirmary for a cloak. Mother Cree had tried. Lyra had seen the old woman trying to push through the crowd, and one of Kael's men had stopped her with a hand on her chest, and Mother Cree had stood there looking small and furious and helpless with tears running down both of her cheeks. At the gate, Garm stopped. "Healer," he said. "Don't," she said. "Take this." He pulled his own cloak off. It was a big woolen fur thing, black, Draven black, the wrong color for her to be wearing out of this gate. She looked at it. She looked at him. "He'll see you're not wearing it when you go back in," she said. "He'll know. He'll know." "Garm." "Healer, please, take it. 3 days to Orin's Ford. You won't make it in that dress. And if he wants to put me on the whipping post for it, let him. I know what he did in there wasn't right, and I don't care who hears me say it." She took the cloak. She did not put it on. She folded it over her arm because she was not going to arrive at Orin's Ford wearing Draven black. Not now, not ever. "Thank you," she said. "Keep walking till dawn," he said. "Don't stop. The cold will kill you if you stop. If you hear horses behind you, get off the road. If you hear wolves, climb. Do you have a knife?" She shook her head. He gave her his belt knife, a short, ugly, practical thing with a wooden handle that was worn smooth from his hand. "Thank you," she said again. "Healer," he broke off. "Lyra." She looked at him. "There's something wrong with him tonight," he said, very quiet. "I've served him 9 years. I've never seen him look at a woman the way he looked at you. I've never seen him lie like that, out loud, in front of the whole hall. Something's wrong. It doesn't matter. It might. It doesn't." She looked up at him. She had never seen Garm from this angle before. He looked old suddenly, older than Mother Cree. Go back in, Garm, before he notices. Tell him you threw me out into the snow. Tell him I wept. He'll want to hear that I wept. I'll tell him you spat in my face. Her mouth twitched. It was almost a smile. She had not thought she had a smile left in her. Tell him that, then. He opened the gate. She walked through. The South Road went 3 days to Orin's Ford, but Lyra Ashen did not take the South Road. She walked half a mile out of sight of the walls until the last torch was gone behind her, and there was nothing but the black shape of the Black Spine Mountains on her left and the long white emptiness of the plain on her right. Then she stopped. She stood in the snow for a long minute, and she breathed. 1, 2, 3. When the count did not stop the shaking, she counted to 10. When that did not work, she counted to 50. At 50, she finally let herself look back. Hollow Reach was a cluster of yellow lights a mile behind her, small as a hand, small as nothing, and she could not see the Great Hall from here, but she knew exactly where it was. She could feel it. She could feel him. The bond he had rejected was still there, burning quietly in the base of her neck like a coal somebody had tried and failed to put out. He was still in the hall, probably sitting back down next to Seraphine Volk, probably drinking, probably... Oh, this was the thing that made her finally let the first tear come. Probably already half convinced he had done the right thing. She put her hand flat against her chest. All right, she said, out loud, to the snow. All right. She was 21 years old. She had no alpha. She had no pack. She had one knife and one cloak and a belly that had not seen food since noon. And the temperature was dropping, and the wolves came down from the Black Spine in the Bone Moon. Everybody knew that. That was why you didn't travel in the Bone Moon. That was why only idiots and exiles walked these roads in the last week of the year. All right, she said again. She turned left. The South Road ran straight to Orin's Ford. The left road did not exist. The left road was the old hunter's track that went up into the foothills of the Black Spine itself, the place that even the raiders didn't go in the winter, because the Black Spine in the winter killed things that walked on 2 legs for sport. She turned left because she knew Kyle Draven. She had known him for 1 hour, but she knew him. She had watched his face while he rejected her, and she had watched a small thing happen at the very back of his eyes when she said the words, I am nothing, and she had felt him feel it. The bond was not broken. He could say the words. He could reject her in front of every lord in the north. He could not unmake what the blood had made, which meant that in 2 days, maybe 3, when Seraphine Volk was asleep and the wine was out of his system and the bond was still there, burning in his spine the way it was burning in hers, Alpha Kale Draven was going to wake up in the middle of the night and want to know where she was. He would send men to the South Road first. He would not think to send them up the Black Spine. Nobody was stupid enough to go up the Black Spine. Lyra Ashen, who was perhaps a little stupid and certainly a little done being careful, put on the stolen Draven black cloak, because if she died of cold out here, she would die of cold in it, and she could stop caring what color it was, tucked the belt knife into the rope at her waist, and started walking uphill into the dark. The wind came at her sideways. The snow came at her sideways. Somewhere behind her, about 2 hours into her walk, the mountain wolves started to sing. She kept walking. She had been walking for something like 5 hours, and the moon was coming up over the Black Spine peaks. The bone moon, white as a skull, enormous. When the thing in her chest started to wake up, she almost didn't notice it at first. She was too cold. She had lost feeling in her fingers around hour 2. Her feet were a problem she was deliberately refusing to think about. She had fallen 3 times, gotten up 3 times, and on the 4th fall she had sat in the snow for a full minute before she had been able to convince her legs to move. But somewhere up the slope, in a patch of wind shadow behind a broken wall of rock, something warm turned over inside her ribs. It was not the bond. The bond was a cold burn high on her neck. This was something lower, deeper, something under her sternum, under her lungs, almost in her spine. It felt like a second heartbeat. It felt like a hand curling. She stopped. She put her palm flat on her chest again. Through the wool, through the cloak, through the skin, she could feel the warmth. Her own warmth, which was strange because she shouldn't have had any warmth left. "What are you?" she whispered. Nothing answered. But when she started walking again, she realized she could see better. The snow had stopped glaring white in the moonlight and gone almost gray, a soft, readable gray, and she could see the shape of every rock on the slope ahead of her for 50 paces, sharp as daylight. She could hear the wolves again, too. They had moved closer while she wasn't paying attention, and she could hear how many of them there were. 4. No. 5. One of them was hurt. Its breathing was wrong. She had never been able to count wolves by their breathing before. She kept walking. The warmth under her sternum kept turning. Behind her, miles down the slope, in a great hall full of smoke and wine, and men too drunk to look at the door, Alpha Kale Draven was sitting very still with his fist closed on the stem of a silver cup. And the cup was bending in his hand, and Seraphine Volk was saying his name, and he was not answering, because he had just felt, in the base of his neck, cold as iron. The exact moment his rejected mate crossed the tree line of the black spine and disappeared from every hunter, every scout, every tracker he owned. He did not know that yet. He thought he was only angry. He would learn. Up on the mountain, Lyra Ashen laughed. It was a small, rough laugh, mostly a breath, and it surprised her. She hadn't planned on it, and she hadn't thought she had it in her, not tonight. But the wolves had gone quiet at the sound of her, and the warmth under her sternum had uncoiled another inch, and somewhere above her, on the black shoulder of the mountain, an owl lifted off a branch and flew east without a single sound, as if something down below had told it to move. She tightened the draven black cloak around her shoulders. She kept walking uphill. She walked until the sky started to gray at the edges, and then she walked past that because stopping meant dying, and she had not come this far to die on a mountain in a stolen cloak. The wolves had followed her for most of the night. She could feel them more than hear them now. That new sense under her sternum had sharpened into something close to sight, a map of warm bodies moving through the dark. 5 of them, strung out along the slope behind her in a loose crescent. The hurt one was falling back. The big one, the one running point on her left flank, was the problem. He was pacing her, not charging, pacing, waiting for her to fall down one more time and not get up. "Go on then," she said. Her voice came out cracked and strange. "Come try me." He didn't. That was the part that made her stomach turn over. He should have. A lone omega, wool dress, staggering uphill at the end of the bone moon. She was a meal with legs. And he was not coming. He was staying just close enough to watch. She crested a ridge at what must have been an hour before dawn, and for the first time since leaving the gate at Hollowreach, the wind dropped. It dropped so suddenly she almost fell. The pressure she hadn't realized she was leaning into wasn't there anymore, and she lurched 2 steps forward into an enormous flat silence. In front of her, the mountain opened up. A bowl, maybe 300 yards across, rimmed with black rock, and at the bottom of it a long frozen tarn the color of pewter under the moon. There were trees around the edges, stunted pines bent sideways by a lifetime of wind. There was a cave mouth on the far side, half hidden by a fall of stone. And in the middle of the bowl, 3 stone markers stuck up out of the snow like teeth. She stopped breathing. Everyone in the north knew about stones like that. Old stones. Bloodstones. Put there by the first alphas who had come across the Black Spine 1,000 winters ago, back when there had been more kinds of people in this world than just the ones the councils liked to count. The priests said the markers were superstition. Mother Cree said the priests didn't know their own grandmothers. The wolves stopped at the rim of the bowl. She turned her head and she saw them, the whole line of them, standing along the ridge she had just crossed, 5 pairs of yellow eyes in a row, and none of them would step down onto the slope. The big one, and he was big, bigger than he had any right to be, the size of a small horse, sat on his haunches in the snow and put his head down on his paws and watched her with something that looked almost like patience. They were not going to follow her into the bowl. She did not know why, and her knees were shaking too hard for her to think about it clearly, so she just took the gift. She went down the slope at a staggering half-run, half-fall, one arm out for balance, and the other clutching the cloak against her throat. The wolves did not move. The cave on the far side grew as she stumbled toward it, bigger than it had looked from the ridge, a proper mouth, maybe 10 feet high and twice that wide. There were black streaks on the stone above it, where old smoke had climbed out, a long, long time ago. Someone had lived here. Once. She reached the mouth of the cave, and the warmth under her sternum uncoiled the whole way at last, and her knees gave out, and she went down. Not unconscious. Not quite. She was aware of the rock under her cheek. She was aware of the cloak tangling around her legs. She was aware, in a distant, floating way, that she had just walked 9 hours up a mountain in a bone moon blizzard, and the fact that she was still breathing was something she would need to think about later when she had the equipment to think. Her last thought before the gray at the edges of her vision closed in and took her was that the cave smelled wrong. Not bad. Wrong. It smelled like something warm, and something green, and something that should not have been warm or green in the middle of a black-spine winter. Then the gray closed in. She woke to firelight. That was the first wrong thing. There had not been a fire when she passed out. She had landed inside the lip of the cave, half out of the wind, and the cave had been black. The second wrong thing was that she was not on the stone anymore. She was on something soft. A pelt of some kind, thick, heavy, shed in long, dark strands against her cheek. And there was a blanket, a real blanket, rough woven but clean, pulled up to her shoulders. The third wrong thing was the voice. "Don't sit up fast," it said. "You'll faint again, and I've already done this once tonight. I'd rather not carry you back to the pelt a second time." It was a woman's voice, low, a little tired, older than Lyra's, but not old. Somewhere past 40 maybe, with a kind of accent Lyra couldn't place, not the clipped talk of the black spine, not the long drawl of the southern plains. Lyra sat up fast. Of course she did. The voice had told her not to, and she was not at the moment in a mood to do what voices told her. The cave tilted. Her stomach went up into her throat. She grabbed at the pelt under her to keep the world still. "I told you," the voice said. Dry, not unkind. The woman was sitting across the fire from her. She was cross-legged on another pelt, with a long, thin braid of gray hair pulled over one shoulder, a scar that went across the bridge of her nose and down into her cheek, and eyes that were not any color Lyra had a word for. Pale, almost colorless, like water over stone. She looked like somebody who had stepped out of an old story and hadn't yet gotten around to stepping back in. "Who are you?" Lyra said. Her tongue felt like leather. Her throat tasted like iron. "Drink first." The woman pushed a wooden cup toward her across the stone. "Ask after." "Who are you?" "Girl, drink." Lyra drank. She tried to sip. She ended up gulping. The water was clean and so cold it hurt her teeth, and she did not care. When the cup was empty, she looked up, and the woman took it back and refilled it from a leather skin without a word, and Lyra drank that too. On the third cup, she finally slowed down enough to look. The cave was bigger than it had seemed from outside. The ceiling went up into darkness somewhere overhead. The walls had been smoothed, not natural smooth, worked smooth, and there were marks scratched into the stone at eye level. Long lines of small, sharp symbols that Lyra had never seen before, but that made the back of her neck prickle just to look at. There was a shelf built into one wall with clay pots on it, sealed with wax. There was a second pelt rolled against the back wall that somebody slept on. There was a second bowl, and a second cup, and a second spoon. This was not a shelter. This was a home. "You live here," Lyra said. "I live here. In the black spine, alone." Not always alone. The woman's pale eyes moved over Lyra's face in a slow, professional way, the way Mother Cree had looked at patients, and Lyra realized with a small jolt that she was being measured. Sometimes a girl walks up the mountain in a blizzard. Now and again, one of them gets as far as the bowl. You are the first in 6 winters. 6 winters. The wolves didn't follow me in. No, they don't come into the bowl. Why? The woman tilted her head. What's your name, girl? Lyra opened her mouth to say it and stopped. Lyra Ashen had just been rejected in front of 1,000 witnesses. Lyra Ashen had been walked out of the south gate of Hollowreach by a Draven guard. Lyra Ashen had, as far as anyone down in the valley knew, obediently taken the south road and would turn up frozen in a ditch between here and Orin's Ford. "Lyra," she said. Just that. The woman noticed her leaving the second name off. The woman noticed everything, Lyra was starting to realize, but she only nodded. "I'm Vesa," she said. "You came up my mountain. You can keep the name you'd like to keep, for now." "Your mountain?" "In a manner of speaking. You don't own a mountain. No one owns a mountain. I just live on this one, and the mountain and I have an understanding." Vesa reached out with a long copper-handled ladle and stirred a small iron pot that was sitting in the coals. Something in the pot smelled like onions and bone broth, and Lyra's mouth flooded so hard she had to swallow. Drink the third cup, eat when I tell you. Then we'll see whether I keep you or send you back down in the morning. You could not send me back down in the morning. It came out sharper than Lyra meant. Vesa looked up from the pot. There was something in her face, a little flash of it, that was almost amused. No. No. Lyra set the wooden cup down on the stone next to the pelt. Her hand was shaking. She made it stop. I didn't come up here to be sent back down. I'll walk on in the morning, further up if I have to. I'm not going back to the valley. Ah. It's always when they say that. Vesa ladled broth into a clay bowl. Drink the third cup, Lyra. Then eat. Then sleep. In the morning, I'll look at your feet because I think there's going to be a problem with your feet, and then we'll talk about who you are and what came up my mountain behind you. Nothing came up behind me. Vesa did not answer. She just held the bowl out across the fire, and the steam from it curled up into the dark, and Lyra took it because her hands had started shaking again, and because she was very suddenly so hungry she could have cried. She ate. She did not remember afterward tasting any of it. She remembered only the weight of the bowl and the warmth of it in her palms and the way the older woman watched her the whole time. Not hostile, not kind, just watching, with those pale, water-over-stone eyes that did not blink as often as human eyes were supposed to. When the bowl was empty, Vesa took it from her. Sleep, she said. I'm not... Sleep, girl. Lyra slept. She slept like somebody had hit her in the head with a stone. Her feet were a problem. Vesa was right about her feet. Vesa was right about everything, Lyra was discovering, in the way of people who have lived alone with only their own rightness for company for a very long time. The second toe on her left foot was black at the tip. The little toe on her right was gray. Vesa sat on a low stool at the foot of the pelt the next morning and worked over them with warm water and a small sharp knife and a salve that smelled like pine pitch and something sharper, something Lyra could not name, and Lyra bit down on a strip of leather Vesa had put between her teeth and did not scream. You'll keep them, Vesa said after a long while. Both of them. You'll be sorry for a month, but you'll keep them. Thank you. Vesa did not look up from the salve pot. Don't thank me yet. Why not? Because I am about to be unkind to you, and you will not like me for it. Lyra took the leather out of her mouth. Go ahead. You're carrying something, Lyra. I'm not pregnant. I didn't say pregnant. Vesa finally looked up. Her pale eyes were very steady. I said carrying. There's something alive in your chest. Something that wasn't there when you were born. Something that came up in you last night, on the slope, when you thought you were going to die. Do you know what I'm talking about, or do I have to say more? Lyra's throat closed. She put a hand flat on her sternum. Under the wool, under her ribs, the warmth was still there. Not the full uncoiling it had done last night. In the snow, something smaller, curled back in on itself, the way a cat settles after hunting. But there, awake, aware of being looked at. I feel it, she said. Good. Some don't. What is it? Too soon to tell you. Vesa. Too soon. The woman set the salve pot aside and wiped her hands on a square of dark cloth. If I tell you now, you'll do the thing the young always do. You'll try to use it right away, and if you try to use it before you understand it, it will eat you, and I will have bandaged your feet for nothing. That isn't an answer. No. Vesa got up. Her knees cracked. She did not hide the crack. She limped, just slightly, over to the shelf of clay pots. It is the beginning of an answer. The whole answer comes later. It always does. I don't have later. Vesa turned around. Why not? Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Outside the cave, the wind was still up. Outside the cave, the wolves had gone. Lyra had already felt with her new strange sense that they had retreated back down the slope at dawn. Outside the cave, somewhere a long day's ride to the south, a man with a scar from his eyebrow to his mouth was waking up with a headache and an ache under his sternum that he was going to tell himself was a hangover. Because an alpha rejected me 3 nights ago, Lyra said, in front of his whole hall. And I think when he can't find my body on the south road, he's going to start looking. Vesa did not react. She just studied Lyra's face with those pale eyes for a long, careful moment. "Ah," she said again, and then, softer, almost to herself, "Oh, girl." "What?" "Nothing. Nothing you can hold yet." Vesa came back to the fire. She sat down on the low stool. "I will make you a bargain, Lyra." "I have nothing to bargain with." "You have your hands. You have your willingness. That is more than nothing. It is, in fact, almost everything." Vesa leaned her elbows on her knees. "Stay the winter. You cannot walk further into the black spine on those feet, and you cannot go back down because you've already told me why. So stay. Work. Learn from me what I am willing to teach you. And in the spring, if you still want to go somewhere, I will point you somewhere. And if I say no, then you limp out in the morning and I pretend I never saw you. And the wolves will have you by the end of the day." Lyra looked at her for a long moment. "What would I learn?" she said. Vesa's mouth twitched, just at one corner, like a crack in stone. "Whatever you are," she said, "I know how to feed it." She stayed the winter. That sentence, which she would tell people years later, made it sound simple. It was not simple. Nothing about that winter was simple. She stayed because she had no other choice. She stayed because her toes hurt too badly to walk for the first 2 weeks, and because by the time she could walk, the passes behind her had closed under snow deeper than a man was tall. She stayed because the first time she tried to argue with Vesa about going down the mountain in midwinter, Vesa had just looked at her and said, "Then go." And Lyra had stood at the mouth of the cave for 10 full minutes and watched her own breath crystallize in the air and understood that the mountain would kill her in under a day. She worked. Vesa had not been joking about the work. There was wood to split, endless wood, gray pine from the twisted trees at the edge of the bowl, stacked in a lean-to cut into the rock next to the cave mouth. There was water to haul, because Vesa did not trust the tarn in midwinter and made Lyra break the ice on a smaller spring behind the cave, twice a day, and carry it in leather buckets. There was laundry and lye water that chapped her hands open. There was a goat, an actual goat. One old nanny goat whose name was Beat, who lived in a stall dug into the back of the cave and produced, against all reasonable biological expectation, just enough milk to keep the two of them from scurvy. And Beat had to be milked and fed and talked to, because Vesa said goats who weren't talked to got mean. And at night, when the work was done and the fire was low and the wind was howling against the mouth of the cave like a thing that wanted in, Vesa taught her, not magic. Lyra had expected magic at first, and Vesa had laughed at her the first time she used the word. "Magic," Vesa had said, stirring the pot. "Magic. You've been listening to minstrels." "What do you call it then?" "I call it what it is. Discipline, breath, blood. The moving of heat in the body. The moving of heat out of the body too, which is harder. It isn't magic, girl. Magic is what people call a thing when they don't want to bother learning how it works." So Vesa taught her how it worked. The first week, it was breath. Just breath. Lyra sat cross-legged on a pelt across from Vesa in the dim of the cave, and Vesa made her breathe. In through the nose to the count of 4, hold for 7, out through the mouth for 8. Over and over, hour after hour, until Lyra was dizzy, and then past dizzy, and then into a strange flat place behind her own eyes where thoughts went quiet. "I feel stupid," Lyra said on the 3rd day of it. "Good. How is that good?" "Because you'll stop soon." Vesa did not open her eyes. Stupid is the first thing that leaves, then bored, then afraid. Then you find the thing under the afraid, and that is where we begin. The second week, it was listening. Vesa made her sit at the cave mouth alone for 2 hours at a time, wrapped in pelts, and listen. Not to anything in particular. Just listen. Lyra would come back in with her ears ringing and a list of complaints. The wind was loud. The tarn creaked under its ice. She could hear Beat chewing in the back of the cave. She could hear her own heartbeat, which was frankly obnoxious. And Vesa would nod and say, "More." On the 9th day of listening, Lyra came back into the cave and said, "There's a fox on the east slope. It's been there an hour. I think it's chasing a hare." Vesa looked up from the hide she was scraping. "You saw it," she said. Not a question. "I didn't see anything. My eyes were closed." "You heard it." "No." Lyra sat down hard on the stool by the fire. Her hands had gone a little cold suddenly, the way they did when she had stood up too fast. That's the problem. I didn't hear it either. I knew it. I don't know how else to say it. I knew the fox was there. I knew where. I knew what it was doing, and then I wanted to check. And I opened my eyes, and there it was, coming over the ridge. Vesa did not smile. That was the thing about Vesa. She was not a smiling woman, but something changed in her face for a half second, a softening at the corners of the eyes. And Lyra had spent enough weeks with her now to know it was as close as the older woman came to being pleased. Good, Vesa said. Is that normal? Normal for what? For whatever I am. Lyra. Vesa set down the hide. There is no normal for what you are. I have known 2 other people in my life who had what you have. One of them was my teacher. One of them was a boy I killed because he tried to use what he had before he was ready, and he was about to kill 11 other people with it, and I reached him first. He was 16. You are 21. You have time, more time than he had, but only if you stop being in a hurry. Lyra felt the cold hands again. You killed him. Yes. With what? Vesa looked at her steadily. With what you have, girl. With what I have taught you 2 weeks of and will teach you much more of. That is the thing about what you have. It is a blade. It cuts on the forward stroke and the back. Are you listening? I'm listening. Then say the thing. It cuts on the forward stroke and the back. Good. Vesa picked the hide back up. Now go milk Beat. She'll kick you tonight if you don't. She's in a mood. The winter was long. That is the thing about black spine winters. They are long even when you are inside with walls and a fire, and they are longer still when you are sleeping in a cave with a woman who may or may not be human and a goat named Beat, and the unnamed warmth in your chest that is slowly, each week, becoming more awake. Lyra did not count the days. Vesa had told her not to, and Vesa had been right about enough things that Lyra had stopped arguing with her about the small ones. She was splitting wood on a morning halfway through what she thought was the 3rd month, when Vesa came out of the cave and said, "Put the axe down, girl. We have company." Lyra straightened. She had not heard anything. That was what bothered her first. 2 months ago, she would not have heard anything because there had been nothing to hear. Now, she was supposed to hear things. Now, she noticed a fox on the east slope before she opened her eyes. And she had not heard this. "Where?" she said. "Down the bowl." "How many?" 3. Lyra put the axe down. She walked to the edge of the flat ground in front of the cave and looked down. The bowl stretched out below her. The tarn in the middle was a gray lid. The ridge where the wolves had stood was bare, and 3 dark shapes were coming over the ridge. They were not wolves. Wolves moved in a certain way, low, fluid, one behind the other. These moved heavily, upright. Men. 3 men, on foot, in dark cloaks, picking their way down the inside of the bowl toward the cave. Lyra did not know their faces from this distance. She did not need to. The way the one in front walked, even over snow, even over broken ground, even dressed in rough hunter's wool to blend in, she knew that walk. She had watched that man come down the 3 steps off a dais 3 months ago and tell a hall of 1,000 people that she was nothing. "Oh," she said, very quietly. "Yes," Vesa said from behind her. "I wondered." "You wondered what?" "I wondered when he would come for you. I confess I thought it would be longer." Lyra's hand had gone up to the base of her neck, without her asking it to the place where the bond mark still burned quietly. She yanked it back down. "He is not coming for me," she said. Vesa, he is your mate, Lyra." "He is not my mate. He rejected me." "Yes, and here he is." Vesa's voice was flat, not unkind, just flat. "At the bottom of a bowl on a mountain that nobody comes to, in the 3rd month of a black spine winter, with 2 men, no pack horse, and no supply wagon. Tell me a story where that man is here by accident. Go on, I will listen." Lyra did not try. She watched him come. Her hands had gone numb. Not from the cold. Her hands had gone numb the way they had in the great hall when his eyes had first landed on her, and she hated that. She hated that 3 months on a mountain and 2 months of breath and hearing work had not been enough to make her body stop recognizing his. "Go inside," Vesa said. No. Lyra, no. She turned. You said he would eat me if I wasn't ready. I'm not going to run from him. I'm not going to hide in your cave like a rabbit. If he has come up here for me, I want to see his face when he sees mine. Then at least, Vesa said, and there was a note in her voice that Lyra had never heard before. Not warning, not quite, but something close. Listen to me. Listen very carefully. That man has not come 3 days up a black spine in midwinter for nothing. He is here because something is broken in him that he cannot fix. You do not have to fix it. Do you hear me? You have no debt to him. If he kneels, if he bleeds, if he says words you waited all your life to hear, you have no debt. I hear you. Say it. I have no debt. Say it again. I have no debt. Good. Vesa stepped back. She did not go inside. She stayed at the cave mouth, one hand resting against the stone, her pale eyes fixed on the 3 men climbing up out of the bowl. Then go stand where he can see you. Lyra walked forward. She stopped at the lip of the flat ground, where the slope began about 30 paces down from the cave. The wind came up the bowl and caught her hair, and she realized distantly that her hair was not the hair she had been rejected in. It was longer now, thicker, darker somehow. She had cut it once in the 2nd month, and it had come back in by the end of the 3rd. Her hands were not the hands she had been rejected with either. Her hands were hard now, across the palms, from the axe and the buckets and the lye water, and her forearms, under the rough wool sleeves Vesa had given her, were roped with small new muscle. The man in front looked up the slope. He saw her. He stopped. She watched him stop. She watched him put up a hand without turning his head, and his 2 men stopped behind him. She watched him take 1 step forward, and another, and on the 3rd step she could see his face clearly for the first time. He looked terrible. She had not expected that. She had expected him to look the way he had looked in the hall. Cold, clean, deliberate, the wolf sitting behind the man's eyes. He did not. His face was thinner. The scar from his eyebrow to his mouth looked like somebody had just drawn it in. There were hollows under his eyes that had not been there 3 months ago. He looked like a man who had not slept in a long time, and the last time he had slept, he had not slept well. He looked, Lyra thought with a small cold shock, the way she had looked in the mirror Mother Cree used to keep at the infirmary, the morning after a patient had died on her. Lyra, he said. His voice carried up the slope. It was not loud. It was somehow worse than loud. She did not answer. He came up another 5 steps and stopped again. Lyra Ashen, he said. I knew. He stopped himself. He had to stop himself. She could see him making himself. I knew you were alive, something told me. I have been looking for 3 months. Why, she said. Just the one word. It came out level. She was proud of that afterward, the levelness of it. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He was looking at her as if he was seeing 2 of her at once, one of her now, standing at the lip of the slope in rough wool with hard hands, and another of her, the one in the gray dress and the muddy boots, and the 2 of her were not matching up, and it was costing him something. Because I was wrong, he said. She felt Vesa, at the cave mouth behind her, shift her weight. Go on, Lyra said. I was wrong, he said again. About the bond. About you. About... I was wrong, Lyra. I have come to say it. I have come to ask... No. He stopped. No? No. She stepped forward, just 1 step, down the slope, toward him. Her feet did not hurt. She realized that vaguely, with part of her mind. Her feet had not hurt in weeks, and she had not noticed, because Vesa had not let her notice. I did not ask what you had come to ask. I asked why. Why are you here, Kyle Draven? On my mountain, in my winter. 3 months after you told your whole hall that I was a mistake of the blood. What is it that has brought you up here looking like a man who has not slept? Because I will tell you right now, if it is guilt, I do not want it. If it is the bond clawing at the back of your neck the way it has been clawing at mine, I do not care. If it is Seraphine Volk finally doing something that made your stomach turn, I am not the one who is supposed to catch you. So say it. Why are you here? He did not answer right away. One of the men behind him moved. Just a little, just a shift of weight. Lyra's new sense, the thing under her sternum, the thing Vesa had been feeding all winter on breath and silence and Fox on the east slope, pinged that movement like a struck bell. The man behind Kyle was reaching, not for a weapon, but for something on his belt, something wrapped, a bundle. Leather wrapped, about the size of a forearm. She did not know what was in it. She knew, with a certainty that did not come from thought, that whatever was in it, it was for her, and it was not a gift. Her eyes went back to Kyle's face, and she watched him see her see it. He did not flinch. She would give him that. He had been an alpha for 31 years, and he did not flinch. But his jaw moved just a fraction, and his eyes closed for a half second, and when they opened again, there was something in them she almost recognized. Something she had seen in the back of his eyes for one instant, 3 months ago in the Great Hall, when she had said, "I am nothing," and he had not expected her to get the words out. "Lyra," he said, quieter now. "I did not come alone because I wanted to. Kyle, listen to me. Kyle, the council sent me." The wind dropped. It dropped the way it had dropped the night she'd come over the ridge. That sudden absence of something she had not known she was leaning into. The whole bowl went still. Somewhere, very far down, she heard the tarn ice crack under its own weight. She heard Beat shift in her stall inside the cave. She heard Vesa, behind her, put one hand very slowly on the handle of something leaning against the cave wall that Lyra had never before thought of as a weapon. "The council," Lyra said. "The council of the Blackspine." "Yes." "Sent you." "Yes." "To do what?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to answer. The man behind him, the one with the wrapped bundle on his belt, was already moving his hand away from it, slow and open, the way a man shows he is not about to do a thing. Which meant, Lyra understood with a cold, clear lift of her diaphragm, that he had been about to do the thing, and Kyle had just, with some small movement she had not seen, told him not to. "Not yet. Kale Draven," she said. Level, still. Level was a gift she was giving herself. "Did you come up this mountain to kill me?" He looked at her. He looked at her for a long time. The sun behind him had come up over the east rim of the bowl while they had been talking, and the light caught his face from the side and made the scar from his eyebrow to his mouth stand out like a seam. His eyes, which she had thought in the great hall were nearly black, were not black at all in this light. They were the color of old river stones when the water is high. "I came up this mountain," he said very slowly, "because if I had refused to come, they would have sent someone else, and you would not have seen them coming." Behind her, at the cave mouth, Vesa made a small sound that was not quite a laugh, and somewhere under Lyra's sternum, the warm thing she had been feeding all winter finally, opened its eyes the whole way. The warm thing opened its eyes, and the first thing it saw, through her, was the man on Kyle's right. Lyra did not move her head. Vesa had trained her out of that, in the weeks at the cave mouth. Do not turn toward the thing you are tracking. The turn is a tell. The turn is the gift you give your enemy. She kept her face on Kyle. Her breath kept going, in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8, which was such a stupid piece of counting, and yet her ribs had learned it, and her ribs held her up. But under her sternum, the thing she still did not have a word for was reading the man on the right. He was maybe 30. Lean, shorter than Kyle, with a black spine jaw. He was trying very hard to stand the way Kale stood, which was the first thing the warm reading told her. He was not one of Kyle's. He was copying Kyle. And the leather-wrapped bundle on his belt, the one he had almost drawn and had not drawn, smelled, under all the cold and the pine and the sweat of 3 days' hard climb of wolfsbane. Not in an oil, not in a tincture, in the pure crushed root. A dose of it that size, thrown in a face, would kill an unturned omega inside a quarter of an hour. A dose of it that size, breathed in from a downwind, would drop an alpha to his knees for long enough to put a knife through his throat. It was not only for her. The warm thing noted that, and coiled back, satisfied, the way a cat settles after it has finished counting the mice. "The council sent you," she said. Her voice stayed level. She was becoming, she realized with a distant detachment, very good at level. "To kill me." "To confirm," Kale said. "Confirm. Confirm that you were alive. Confirm whether the bond could be proved false by death." "Proved false by death." "Lyra." "Say it properly, Kale Draven. I want the full sentence." He closed his eyes for a bare half second, opened them. If the rejected Omega is killed inside a year and a day, he said, the bond is called void by blood. Clean. Nothing carries over. The Alpha is released. That is what the old law says. That is what the council voted. And you agreed. I stood in the room while they voted. Did you raise your hand? I did not raise my hand against it. The man on the right moved. Again. Just a shift. Again. It was too small for Kyle to see because the man had positioned himself in Kyle's blind spot on the scar side, which was, Lyra realized with a slow, cold feeling, the whole point of that man being on that side. Vesa, behind her, had gone absolutely still. Not the stillness of fear, the stillness of something weighing a throw. Kyle, Lyra said, softer. The man on your right. He did not turn his head. He was a black spine alpha. He did not turn his head to check. He watched her face. What about him? He is not yours. Mine. He was not one of your 9 years, Kyle. He walks like you. He doesn't stand like you. He was put in this party by somebody who wanted you to think he was yours, and you did not think hard enough about it, because it has been 3 months and you have not slept, and you let them give you a man you did not know. She watched it land. Something in Kyle's face went gray. Not the gray of embarrassment, the gray of a man who has just realized that the ground under him is not the ground he was standing on yesterday. Garm vouched for him, he said. Not to her, to himself. Did Garm give him the bundle on his belt? Lyra. Did Garm? No. Who did? He did not answer right away. Counselor Ovind, he said finally, the steward of the seal, he said it was a measure, a mercy. That if I could not do it, it would be a mercy, she repeated. Yes. Kyle Draven. Yes. There is wolfsbane in the bundle, pure, crushed, enough to take you down with me. She heard the sound Kale made at that. It was not a word. It was the sound a man makes when he has been walking on ice for 3 months and the ice cracks. He did not turn his head to look at the man on his right. He did something much worse. He smiled. It was a very small smile. It did not reach his eyes. It was the smile of an alpha who had been an alpha too long to be startled in public, and Lyra, who had spent 3 months learning to read breath, watched his shoulders soften and understood that he was about to move, and that when he moved, the bowl was going to get very loud. Kael, she said. He did not answer her. Kael, wait. Lyra, he said quietly, go back to the cave. No. Lyra, for once in your life, no, listen to me. Listen. The other man, the left, he is yours. Yes? Yes? And the one on the right. I hear you. If you go for the right one first, the left one still has to choose. He is slow. I am reading him. He is frightened. He does not know what is in that bundle. He does not know Oven put a man in your company. If you kill the wrong one first, you will have to kill the other afterward, and you will not have an answer to bring down the mountain. Do you understand me? I understand you. Take the right one alive. Lyra, take him alive, Kael. I want him. There was a silence. The kind of silence that has weight. The kind of silence that made Beat, in the stall deep in the cave behind them, stop chewing and lift her head. You want him, Kael said. I want him. For what? For questions. It came out of her voice lower than her voice usually sat, and she heard it with a strange half-second of surprise, as if somebody else had put the sentence in her mouth. Behind her at the cave, Vesa made a small sound that was not a laugh, and was not approval, but was, Lyra understood, a mark on the wall. Vesa had seen something. Vesa had been waiting to see it. Vesa had just seen it. Kael's face did something complicated. All right, he said. Then he moved. He was fast. She had known he would be fast. Every Black Spine Alpha was fast. She had watched him come down 3 steps off a dais in a way that had made her hindbrain press itself flat against the back of her skull. And she had known, in that instant, that the stories about Kael Draven killing 104 men with his own hands were not stories. But she had not known how fast. He did not turn toward the man on his right. He turned away. That was the trick of it. He pivoted on his left foot, his whole body going the wrong way, which meant that in the very first fraction of a second of the fight, the man on his right thought Kael was doing something else. Going for the one on the left, maybe, or breaking away up the slope. And the man on the right did the one thing a trained assassin is trained not to do. He relaxed. Then Kael's right elbow came back and caught him in the throat. It was a sickening sound, a soft crunch, and a wet wheeze. The man on the right went down to his knees in the snow and did not go further, because Kael's left hand was already in his hair, holding him up, and Kael's right hand had come down and seized his wrist and twisted it, and the knife the man had somehow gotten halfway out of his cloak in that half-second clattered onto the ice-hard ground between them. The other man, the one on the left, the one Lyra had said was Kael's, had his blade drawn. He did not know where to point it. "Down, Hal," Kael said. Quiet. Not even out of breath. "Knife in the snow, now." "My lord." "Hal, knife in the snow." The man on the left put his knife in the snow. Kael looked up the slope at Lyra. He was breathing harder now. Not from the move, from something else. His scar was standing out livid against his face. The man in his hand was still on his knees, still wheezing, and Kael had not yet taken the bundle off his belt, though Lyra could see he was very aware of it. His right hand was flat on the man's forearm, pinning it, keeping the fingers from going anywhere near that leather. "Lyra Ashen," he said, and his voice was different now, lower, almost amused, almost... She did not want to think about the word, so she did not think about it. "You read him faster than I did." He was not hiding it very well. He was hiding it from me. He was hiding it badly from you because he had already decided he was better than you. Men who have already decided they are better than you do not bother to hide things well. Kael made a sound. It was not quite a laugh, but it was in the neighborhood. "Come down off the slope," he said. "Please." "No." "Lyra." "Kael, I am not coming down off the slope. I have told you 3 times. I am not going to make it 4. You have taken the man alive. I asked for that. Thank you. Now bring him up." He did. He was careful about it. Hal, the one who had put his knife in the snow, came up behind them, watching his feet, very aware that whatever was happening, he was not the one making it happen. Vesa, at the cave mouth, did not move. Her hand had gone off the handle of the thing by the cave wall. Lyra noticed that in passing, but she had not stepped forward, and she had not stepped back. Kael stopped 10 paces down from Lyra, with the man still on his knees, the man's wrist still in Kael's iron grip. "Here," he said. "Closer." "Lyra." "Closer, Kael." He brought the man up another 3 paces and stopped again. This was close enough that Lyra could see his face. Not Kael's. The other one. The assassin. He was not 30, she realized. He was younger than that, maybe 25, with a soft mouth and a broken nose that had been broken cleanly, the way noses only get broken by teachers who know what they are doing. His eyes were watering from the elbow to the throat. Otherwise, he looked calm. That was the part she did not like. "What is your name?" Lyra said. He did not answer. "What is your name?" "Nothing." "Kael, take the bundle off his belt and put it a long way away from all of us." Kael did. He did not let go of the man's wrist to do it. He just used one hand, slipped the thong, lifted the leather bundle by a single finger, and tossed it back down the slope with a flick. It went about 15 paces and landed in the snow, and Hal, who understood without being told, walked over to it, picked it up by the thong with the point of his knife, and carried it another 20 paces further down. "Now," Lyra said. "Your name." The man on his knees smiled. It was a very small smile, a polite smile. The kind of smile a man gives when he has been trained by teachers who know what they are doing and who have prepared him for this exact moment, and he is not afraid. "You can ask," he said. "I do not have to answer." "No," Lyra said. "You don't." She came down the slope, not fast. She went carefully. Her feet were fine. She had noticed earlier that her feet were fine, that Vesa's salve had done its work, that all 3 months of splitting wood and hauling water had put something under her that had not been there at the south gate of Hollow Reach. But she went carefully anyway, because the slope was icy in patches, and because she did not want to arrive at him out of breath. She stopped 2 paces in front of him. She had not been this close to Kael since the Great Hall. She was aware of it. He was aware of it. The bond, the cold coal at the base of her neck, was doing something that was not quite burning and was not quite humming. She did not look at him. She looked at the man on his knees. "Do you know what I am?" she said. The man tilted his head. "The council was told," he said, "that you were a kitchen healer, a mistake of a bond, an unbonded omega that the alpha of the black spine had the bad luck to resonate with in a drafty hall. My instructions were to confirm the resonance, confirm the year and a day law, and remove you if my lord could not bring himself to the duty. Kind of you. Efficient. And what do you think I am now?" He looked at her for a long moment. She let him look. This was part of it, she was realizing. Vesa had taught her listening and breath and the moving of heat, and now, on this slope, in the wind, with a man on his knees in front of her, Lyra Ashen was learning the last lesson by doing. You let them look. You let the reading go both ways. You let them feel what you are, and then you ask your question again. "I think," the man said slowly, "that I was given a bad briefing." "I think you are not what the council said." "What do you think I am?" He did not answer. He could not answer. He did not have the word. "Good," Vesa would say later, when Lyra thought back to this moment. "Good, girl. He does not have the word, and that is exactly right. If he had the word, he would not be on his knees. You stay the thing people do not have a word for as long as you possibly can. The word is the beginning of the end." "Who sent you?" Lyra said. "Counselor Ovind. Ovind alone." Ovind stood for the council. "Ovind stood," she said. "For whom?" There was a beat, a small one. She watched his eyes go where eyes go when a man is choosing a lie. "The council, healer." "Try again." "The council." "Try again." "Lyra," Kale said above him, low. "I can make him speak." "I know you can." "Give me the word." "No." She crouched. She did not crouch close enough that he could reach her. Vesa had trained her out of that too. She crouched at 2 paces at the distance of a polite conversation, which was the most frightening distance you could take with a man on his knees, because it meant you were not afraid of him. She had learned that one from Mother Cree, actually. Mother Cree had used it once on a drunk soldier who had come into the infirmary with a knife, and the drunk soldier had ended up weeping on the floor without Mother Cree ever standing up. "You do not want me," she said, "to use what I have on you." "No? No, I have only had it 3 months. I do not have fine control. If I use it on you to make you speak, it will be messy. It will not kill you clean. You will wet yourself and you will bleed out of your eyes, and at the end of it you will still speak. But you will not be a man any of your teachers would recognize. Do you hear me?" The man on his knees breathed once through his nose. "I hear you. So I would prefer that you speak to me like a man who is about to walk down off this mountain with his dignity. The council did not send you alone. Ovind did not stand for the council. Councils do not vote to poison their own alpha. Someone put the wolfsbane in your pack for Kale Draven, and someone told Ovind to pretend it was for me. Who?" The man closed his eyes. He did not open them again. He opened his mouth instead and said, "Seraphine." Kael went very still. The whole bowl went very still. The wind, which had been coming up the slope since dawn, dropped for the second time that morning, and Lyra was beginning to learn that when the wind dropped in that particular way on Vesa's mountain, something was being weighed. "Say it," Kael said. Not to her, to the man on his knees. "Say the whole thing." "Seraphine Volk," the man said, with his eyes still closed, the way a man speaks in a church when he is finally ready to be done lying, "has been in Counselor Ovind's bed for 2 winters. She has persuaded him that the Draven line is ending, that my lord's resonance with the healer was a sign that his blood is breaking, that if the healer lives and the bond holds, the blood of the black spine will pass to an Omega's child, and the council will lose the line. Ovind believes her. So do 4 others on the council. They voted to send me because my lord could not be trusted to finish the work clean. The wolfsbane was provided in case my lord tried to interfere." "Interfere," Kael said. "Protect her, my lord." Kael's free hand had gone to the hilt of the long knife at his hip. He had not drawn it. He had just put his hand there. Lyra could see the knuckles were white. "Lyra," he said. His voice was not level. For the first time in this whole long, terrible conversation, it was not level. I did not know. On my mother's name. On the blood I share with her. I did not know. I believe you. He looked at her. He had not expected that. She watched him not expect it. You believe me. I have been reading you for half an hour, Kael Draven. I know what is under your sternum. You did not know. She stood up. Her knees were cold. She put her hand briefly against the bond mark at the base of her neck, and the coal there, which had been burning for 3 months, did something she had not expected. It flared. Once. Like a log shifting in a fire. And settled. You are also not about to thank me for believing you because we have a bigger problem. We. Kael. Say we again. Focus, Alpha. His mouth twitched. It was not a smile. It was in the neighborhood. Tell me the bigger problem, he said. If 5 counselors voted for this, and Ovind is one of them, and Seraphine has been in his bed for 2 winters, then Seraphine is not an ambitious mistress. She is running a coup. She used the claiming feast to have you publicly reject a fated bond in front of the whole hall because a rejected alpha is a weak alpha, and a weak alpha is an alpha the council can vote to replace. She did not lose you 3 months ago, Kael. She disarmed you. And now she is waiting for news from this man. Lyra nodded at the assassin on his knees. That I am dead, and you are either complicit or conveniently dead along with me. Either answer works for her. Do you understand me? Yes. What does she do when the news does not come? Kael was silent. Kael, what does she do? She moves on Hollow Reach, he said. Slowly. She has the council vote to suspend me for negligence of line, failure to produce an heir, unstable bond, any of it. She puts Ovind in as steward regent. She marries Ovind within the season, quietly, a beta match, very clean, and the Draven line ends without a body. How long? If she does not get word in the next week, she will act within the fortnight. Hollow Reach is 3 days from here in good weather. We are not in good weather, and I have no riders left in the hall I trust after today. He looked at her. He looked at her with something in his face that was not regret, exactly, and not guilt, exactly, and not the bond, though the bond was in it. And Lyra, who had stood in front of him 3 months ago and heard him say she was nothing, could not now for the life of her tell him to get off her mountain. Lyra, he said, don't. Lyra, come down with me. Don't, Kael. Lyra, if I ride into Hollow Reach alone, Seraphine has me killed in the stable yard inside a day. You know this. You have just told me the shape of it. I cannot do this without— Do not, she said. Finish that sentence. Do not tell me you cannot do this without me. You do not get to tell me that. 3 months ago, I stood in a hall with 1,000 people in it, and you told me I was nothing, and if I go down off this mountain tonight because you cannot do this without me, then I was nothing. I will not be nothing, Kael Draven. Do you hear me? I will not be the thing you needed when you needed it. I went away, and I learned, and I am not coming back down off this mountain for your need. Then come down, he said very quietly. For mine. She stared at him. That is the same sentence. It is not. Kael. Lyra, listen to me. He was not on his knees, but his voice had gone into the place a man's voice goes when he is. I did not come up this mountain because I need you. I came up this mountain because I owe you. Those are different. I have owed you for 3 months. I have owed you every night since the bone moon. I did not know it was a debt until the second night, and I did not know how to pay it until I walked into the council chamber last week and heard Ovind say a year and a day, and then I knew. The debt is that I have been alive because of you while you were supposed to be dead, and I cannot pay a debt like that by killing you, so I will pay it the only other way I know. I will stand between you and the people who want you dead until you tell me to stop, and then I will stop. Come down off the mountain with me, or do not. Either way, I will ride into Hollow Reach tonight. He was still holding the assassin's wrist. He let it go. The assassin did not move. He was smart enough to know that moving, at this moment, would be the last thing he did. Vesa, Lyra said, without turning. Girl, Vesa said from the cave. What do I do? There was a long silence. You already know. Vesa, Lyra, I promised you one thing, on the first night you came up the mountain, that I would point you somewhere in the spring. It is not spring, but I will point you anyway. Go down. Vesa, go down. Not for him. For the 5 counselors. For the woman who used a claiming feast like a knife. For the warriors in Hollow Reach who are going to die in the stable yards inside the month if nobody stops it. Not for his need. Not for the bond. For the work. I told you on the first night, I know how to feed the thing in your chest. I have fed it. It is fed. It is not going to grow any further up here, and if you keep it up here, it will turn on you. Take it down. Use it. Come back when you are done. Lyra closed her eyes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8. She opened them. Kael Draven, she said. Lyra, if I come down with you. Yes. I do not come down as your mate. I do not come down as your omega. I do not come down as anything you can introduce to a hall. I come down as a woman who is going to that city to do a thing, and you are the man who is walking in front of me with a sword until I tell you to stop. Do you understand? I understand. Say it. I understand. Say the whole thing. He looked at her for a very long moment, and she watched his mouth shape the words before he said them, and she watched him decide to say them anyway. You are coming down the mountain to do a thing, he said. I am the man walking in front of you with a sword until you tell me to stop. Good. Lyra. What? Thank you. She did not answer that. She turned instead to Vesa at the cave mouth, and Vesa looked at her with those pale water-over-stone eyes. And Vesa, for the first time in 3 months, smiled. It was a terrible smile. Not unkind. Terrible. The smile of a woman who has been waiting a long time for a student to walk down a mountain and has just watched it happen and knows exactly what she is sending down. Girl, Vesa said. Yes. One thing before you go? Yes. The man on his knees. Lyra looked down. The assassin was still kneeling in the snow. His eyes were open again now. He was not smiling anymore. He was watching her with the careful attention a trained man gives to a weapon that he has just understood is loaded. What about him? Lyra said. Do not take him down the mountain with you. Vesa. He will speak again for her before you reach the valley. She will know the bundle failed. She will know the plan turned. And you will lose the one thing you still have, which is the fact that Seraphine Volk does not yet know what you are. You are telling me to kill him. I am telling you to decide. Lyra looked down at him. He was young. He had a soft mouth. He had been given a bad briefing. She thought of Mother Cree, who had taken her in at 9 and never asked her last name. She thought of Marin, the cook's daughter, 14, half in love with a warrior, who had stood beside her in a pillar 3 months ago and had not known what a claiming feast was about to become. She thought of the warriors in the stable yards of Hollow Reach, whoever they were, whoever Seraphine Volk and Counselor Ovind had already marked. She thought of the word the man on his knees did not have for her, and how long she could keep him from getting it, and how far his teachers were, and what his teachers would do to find out where their man had gone if their man did not come back. She knelt down. She did not do it fast. She did it the way Vesa had taught her to do hard things, slowly, deliberately, with her breath in her ribs and the thing under her sternum curled and watching. I am sorry, she said to him, quietly, between the two of them. I'm sorry you had a bad briefing. I'm sorry that you are here and not at home. I'm sorry that the woman who sent you does not deserve the work you have put into being the man you have been taught to be. I want you to know that I see you. I want you to know that I understand what you are. And I want you to know that I am not going to do this cruelly. He looked at her. He did not ask her not to. He understood. The way a man understands when the room he is in has only one door and the door has just shut. And he bowed his head once, very slightly, and closed his eyes. Kael, above them, had gone absolutely still. Lyra, he said. Quiet. Give me the word. I will do it. No. Lyra. No, Kael. I am not letting you do this so that I can walk down off this mountain clean. I am not walking down off this mountain clean. I am walking down off this mountain having done a thing I did, with my own hand, because it was my mountain and he was my problem. And if Vesa is right, and Vesa is right, then there is nothing you or I can do about the shape of what this winter has made of me. Stand back." He stood back. She put her hand flat on the man's chest. She did not close her eyes. She made herself look. She made herself watch. This would be, she understood with a strange, cold clarity, the first of them. There would be more. There would be, if she did what Vesa had told her to do, if she went down the mountain with this alpha and walked into a city of enemies and dismantled a coup and a council, there would be a great many more. And the first one was the one that set the line. The first one was the one that told the thing under her sternum what it was going to be allowed to do and what it was going to be forbidden to do for the rest of her life. She moved heat. That was all. She did not do a grand thing. She did not do the thing in the old songs. She moved heat, the way Vesa had taught her to move heat, except that instead of moving it from the outside of her body to the inside, she moved it from his inside to his outside. All at once, in one long, soft, terrible exhalation that took less than a breath. The man on his knees made a small sound, not of pain, of surprise, as if somebody had touched him on the shoulder to get his attention, and he had turned to see who, and there had been no one there. Then he fell forward into the snow. She caught him. She caught him because she did not want him to fall, and she lowered him down, slowly, onto his side, in a way that she understood afterward was more gentle than the old woman in the cave behind her would ever have been. Vesa would have let him fall. Mother Cree would have let him fall. Lyra Ashen, rejected mate, did not let him fall. She was shaking by the time she stood up. Kyle was looking at her. He was white under his scar. "Lyra," he said, "don't." "Lyra, what?" "Don't, Kyle. Do not ask me what I just did. Not today. I will tell you. I will tell you before we reach the valley. But not on the slope. Not in front of the cave. Walk." He walked. He walked down the bowl, and Hal, the one who was his, followed, and between them they walked without speaking. Lyra did not look at the body in the snow. Vesa would take the body. Vesa, when she was done with whatever she was going to do with it, would leave nothing for any tracker to find. Lyra knew this the way she now knew many things, without having been told. At the ridge, where the wolves had stood 3 months ago, Lyra stopped. She turned. Vesa was at the mouth of the cave. The cave she would probably never see again. The stool she would never sit on again. Beat, who she would never again talk to while her hands were cold around the leather bucket. The pelt she had slept on, the scratched symbols at eye height on the worked stone, the sharp pine smell of the salve, the fire she had tended every night since the bone moon. Vesa lifted her hand. It was a small gesture, not a wave, a mark on the air. The old woman did not smile this time. The time for smiling was past. Lyra lifted her hand back. Then she turned, and she stepped over the ridge, and she started down the mountain with an alpha in front of her and a guard behind her and the thing under her sternum fully awake now, fully fed, fully counting. They were halfway down the first slope when Kyle slowed. He did not stop. He just slowed enough that Hal, at the back, had to slow with him. Lyra closed the distance to his shoulder without being asked. "Lyra," he said, low. "What?" "Your eyes. What about them? Since the slope, since what you did. They are not, they have gone." He did not have the word either. She put her hand up to her own face. She could not, of course, see her own eyes, but the thing under her sternum read her, the way it had learned to read a fox on the east slope and a hunter on a south-facing ridge, and it told her calmly and without alarm that her eyes were no longer the eyes she had been rejected with, that her eyes were the color the moon had been on the bone moon, that her eyes had, in fact, been that color since she had stood up from the body in the snow. "Ah," she said. "Huh? It is always ah when they say that." "Lyra." "Keep walking, Kale Draven. We have 3 days to the valley and a fortnight to stop a coup, and I will explain my eyes to you on the second night when we are far enough from the mountain that I can afford to." He did not argue. That, she thought distantly, was new. They had come down another half-mile of broken slope, and the wind had picked up, and the first real dusk of the day had begun to settle into the creases of the black spine, when the thing under Lyra's sternum did something it had never done before. It flinched. It flinched the way a hand flinches when you touch something hot. She stopped. "Lyra," Kael said at her shoulder. Wait. She closed her eyes. She put her hand flat on her sternum. The warm thing was still there. It had not gone anywhere. But it had just read something very far away, down in the valley, miles and miles and days from the ridge where they stood. And it had read the thing the way she had read the assassin's wrapped bundle this morning. A smell, a pattern, a wrongness that she did not yet have a word for. Kael, she said, what is it? What is the name of the third counselor, the one who Ovind sent on the errand to the Oran's Ford garrison after the vote? Brant. Why? Where is the Oran's Ford garrison this afternoon? On the South Road. Why, Lyra? How many men? 60 horse, 100 foot. And where are they going? He stared at her. Lyra, the South Road goes nowhere between Oran's Ford and Hollow Reach. There is nothing on it worth a garrison. Yes, there is. What? A ditch, she said, very quietly. A ditch 3 days' walk from Hollow Reach where they expect to find a body. And when the body is not there, they will turn. They will turn, Kael, because Seraphine Volk does not wait a fortnight when she can move in a week. She has not waited for the assassin's word. She moved the garrison the day he left. She is already doing it. She is coming up the South Road with 160 men and the authority of 5 counselors. And when she reaches Hollow Reach, she will lock the gates. She will name Oven Steward Regent, and she will announce that the Alpha of the Black Spine did not return from a hunting trip in the Bone Moon, because she will already know you did not ride back with her man. Saki what did. That isn't... She couldn't have... She didn't know. She knew, Kael. She knew the day you left. She knew because Oven told her the hour you rode out. She has been a full day's march ahead of us since before we were in the same room. Kael's face did something she did not have the energy to parse. Then we are a week too late, he said. We are 3 days too late. 3. If we cut north, through the high pass, off the roads, sleeping 2 hours a night. Lyra, nobody crosses the high pass in... We do. He looked at her. He looked at her for a long, long time in the dusk, with the wind picking up between them and the scar on his face livid, and the bond mark at the base of her neck burning steady and low, like a lamp somebody had just trimmed. All right, he said. Down below them, somewhere on the long white fold of the valley that nobody could yet see from the ridge, 160 men were marching up a south road that did not, as far as they knew, have anybody on it. A woman in red was waiting in a hall in Hollow Reach for a piece of news that was not coming. A council of 5 old men was writing the wording of a regency they thought they had a month to debate. And Lyra Ashen, 21 years old, eyes the color of the bone moon, put her hood up, turned her back on the ridge where Vessa still watched, and started to run. She did not run far. Running on a broken slope in the Black Spine at dusk was not running. It was controlled falling, and inside half a mile she had slowed down to a hard long walk because she did not have permission from her own knees to do any more. Kael caught up. Hal caught up. The wind caught up worst of all, climbing the back of her neck with its cold fingers, and she pulled the draven black cloak tighter and kept her feet moving. High pass, Kael said, at her shoulder. He was breathing hard. She noted with a small, uncharitable satisfaction that he was breathing harder than she was. High pass. Lyra, you understand I have crossed it once in my life. In high summer, with 12 men, and I lost 2 of them to a crevasse. You said all right at the ridge. I said all right because I could not think of the thing to say instead. I am saying it now, the high pass in the Bone Moon, with 3 people. In the dark. Then we will not be in the dark for long. The moon is rising. Lyra, Kael, do you have a better road? He was quiet. No, he said finally. Then the high pass. They did not speak for the next hour. Hal behind them did not speak either. Hal had not said 3 words since he had put his knife in the snow. And Lyra was beginning to understand that Hal was one of those men who, having been ordered to obey a thing, did not waste his own breath second-guessing it. She liked Hal for that in a distant, exhausted way, the way she had liked Garm 3 months ago at the south gate. The light went out of the sky slowly, and then all at once. The way light always did in the mountains. 1 minute there had been enough pink left at the western rim of the world to show them where the ground was. The next, There was no pink. There was only the dark and the snow and the beginning of stars above the peaks. And Lyra's new reading under her sternum doing its slow, cold work of mapping the ground for her because her eyes alone were not going to be enough. "Kael," she said after a while. "What?" "Put your hand on my shoulder." What?" "Put your hand on my shoulder. I am reading the ground, and you are not, and you are about to walk into a hole." There was a half second. Then his hand came down on the wool at her shoulder. It was warm through the cloak. It was, she noted with the dispassionate part of her brain that was very busy pretending not to notice things, steadier than she had expected, given what had happened on the slope behind them. "Tell me if I go wrong," he said, quieter than before. "You will go wrong, I will tell you." They walked that way for an hour, her picking the footing, him following at her shoulder, Hal following him at 6 paces behind because Hal had been trained to keep a sightline open. Twice she angled them around a drop that Kael did not see. Once she stopped short and Kael, with his weight already committed forward, went over her shoulder and halfway into a snow shelf that would have dropped him 30 feet down a gully if her free arm had not come up across his chest and braced him. He stood there for a second, breathing, with her arm across him like a bar. "Thank you," he said. "You're welcome." "Lyra, keep walking." They kept walking. On the 3rd hour, the moon finally came up over the east peaks. The bone moon was gone. Had been gone for a fortnight, Lyra realized. Time had done strange things in the cave, and this was a new moon, thin, a curve of white the width of a nail. It did not help them much. But the black spine itself picked up the light and scattered it back across the snow, and Lyra was able to take her hand off the front of Kael's chest and stop bracing for him, and they walked in silence for another 2 hours after that. They camped when they camped in the wind shadow of a granite overhang, maybe a third of the way up to the high pass. Hal built the fire. Hal was good at fires. The wind was very bad, and he built the fire in a cup of rocks in a way that kept every spark exactly where it belonged. And when the fire was going, he sat back on his heels with an expression that was not quite satisfaction and was not quite anything. "Hal," Lyra said. He looked up. "Healer." "Do not call me that." "What do I call you?" She considered it. "Lyra is fine." "That is not a thing I have permission to call you." "I am giving you permission." He glanced at Kael. Kael was unpacking food from his own pack. Dried meat, hard bread, a small wheel of white cheese that had survived 3 days of climbing and had the bruises to show for it. Kael did not look up, but Kael tilted his head a fraction, and Hal took that for the permission it was. "Lyra," he said, trying it. "Hal, how long have you served Alpha Draven?" 11 years. 11. My father served before me. I came up through the kennels." "Does he trust you?" "He has not yet killed me for saying a wrong thing to his face, Healer. Lyra, make of that what you will." She liked him more. "How many men in the hall at Hollow Reach do you count as ours?" Hal looked at Kael. Kael tore a piece of bread in half and handed one piece across to Lyra without looking at her. His jaw was tight. "Answer her," he said. "Garm," Hal said after a moment. "Garm is 20, a man named Os who runs the armory and probably his 2 sons. The master of horse, Tem. Him I would trust with a knife in the dark. The rest of the captains I do not know, not anymore. There have been visitors in the last year. Men from the lowland lords, men I did not recognize. Some of them stayed." "Stayed how?" "Stayed in the keep. Some of them have taken rooms. Some of them ate at the captain's table often enough that the captain stopped looking at them like strangers. That is how it happens, Lyra. You do not notice how many new faces there are at a table until one night you look up and there are more new faces than old ones." "How long has this been happening?" "Since the spring before last." She looked at Kael. 2 winters, she said. The man on the slope said Seraphine had been in Oven's bed for 2 winters. "Hal, when did Oven start spending more time at court than he used to?" "The spring before last, Lyra." "Kael." He was chewing his bread. He was chewing it the way a man chews something that he is not tasting because his mouth needs something to do while his head does the thing it is doing. "I heard you," he said. "Kael, this is not a plot. This is not a week of scheming. This is not a woman who used a claiming feast opportunistically. This is 2 years. She has had 2 years of putting her men in your hall. She has been watching every captain who might take your side when it came. She has been replacing the ones she could not buy. She has been feeding Owen just enough to keep him convinced the council is his idea. Do you understand what I am saying to you? I understand. There may not be any men left in that hall who will take your side when we walk in. I understand. Kael, Lyra, I said I understand. He set the bread down on a flat rock in front of him. He rubbed a hand down over his face. The scar stood out again in the firelight, livid. I have been sitting at my own table for 2 years and not seeing what she was doing to the men at it. And my only excuse is that I have been sitting at that table with a woman I was raised to believe I would marry, and I did not want to see. You do not have to tell me. I know. Lyra was quiet. Hal was quiet. The fire popped. Somewhere far below them, a wolf voice lifted and fell and lifted again, and another answered it from somewhere even farther below. And Lyra thought, the thing under her sternum thought for her, that they were, for tonight at least, well out of reach of anything that walked on 4 legs. Kael, she said, after a long time. What? I am sorry about Seraphine. He looked at her. Don't be. Kael, Lyra, do not be sorry for me. Not about her. I spent my 18th birthday in her father's hall. I spent my 25th birthday in her bed. I have known, if you want the truth of it, for about 4 of the last 9 years, that the woman I have been sleeping with was not the woman I was going to be able to keep. I did not want to say it. I had been raised to not say it. And now a lot of people are going to die because I could not say a thing I had known for 4 years. That is not why a lot of people are going to die. It is part of why. Not the part you have to carry. Seraphine Volk is going to kill people because Seraphine Volk is the kind of person who kills people. You did not make her what she is. You only failed to notice what she was. That is a kind translation. It is a correct translation. Lyra, eat your bread, Kael. He ate his bread. She ate her bread too. It was terrible bread, 3 days stale and crusted with ice on the far side, and she ate every crumb. The thing under her sternum was quiet. It had been quiet since the slope behind the cave. It had done what Vesa had fed it all winter to do, once, and it had settled, and it was letting her drive the body for a while. She was grateful for that. Vesa had said once, in the 2nd month, that the worst thing the warm thing could do to a person was decide it wanted the wheel more than they did, and Lyra did not yet know whether that was something she had to worry about. But tonight it was letting her eat bread. Tonight she was still the one deciding. 2 hours, she said, then we move. Lyra, you need sleep. 2 hours, Kael. Hal can watch the first, you the second. I will sleep the whole time. You will not sleep the whole time. I will sleep enough of it. She did, as it turned out, sleep enough of it. The pelt under her was Kael's. He had unrolled it and put it on the ground next to the fire without asking her, and she had lain down on it without arguing, because she had spent 3 months learning to stop wasting arguments on small things. She slept the way she had slept the first night in the cave, hard, black, without dreams. When Kael's hand came down on her shoulder to wake her, it was not heavy, and she did not flinch, and she thought, lying there for 1/2 second with her eyes still closed, that she was getting used to the hand, and that getting used to it was a problem. Up, he said. Up. She got up. They were moving again inside 5 minutes. Dishab. The high pass was worse than he had said it would be. It was worse than she had made herself imagine. By the 2nd night, they had lost Hal's left thumb to the cold. Frostbitten past saving, and Lyra cut it off herself at the joint by the light of a very small fire, while Hal bit down on the leather grip of his own knife and did not make a sound. And on the 3rd day, the wind came up the ravine behind them at a speed that knocked her flat onto her hands twice in the same hour. They ate the last of the bread on the morning of the 4th day. They ate the last of the dried meat on the night of the 4th. On the 5th day, they came out of the high pass into the long, shallow valley on the far side of the Black Spine, and Lyra, who had not cried at any point in the last 3 months, sat down in a drift of snow with her hands in her lap and cried for about 4 minutes before she stood up and kept walking. Kael, to his eternal credit, did not comment. Hal, to his eternal credit, did not look. They reached the edge of the Draven Forest on the afternoon of the 6th day. The Draven Forest was not truly a forest. It was the long, dark skirt of black pine that ran down the back slopes of the Black Spine and thinned out into farmland as you moved south toward the valley where Hollow Reach sat. In the summer, it was full of charcoal burners and foresters. In the winter, it was empty, and Lyra and her 2 escorts made it to the first sign of human life. An old charcoal pit, long cold, with a rough hut beside it. An hour before sundown on the 6th day, Kale kicked open the door of the hut. There was a man inside it. He was an old man. He had white hair and a soft face, and the kind of belly that charcoal burners developed if they were good at their work and had a wife at home who cooked. He was eating a piece of cold, salted pork off the tip of a knife when the door came off its hinges, and he dropped the pork, and he dropped the knife. And he stared up at the tall, black-cloaked figure in his doorway, with his mouth hanging open. "Lord Draven," the old man said. Then, "Oh no." "Os," Kyle said. "Oh no. Os, stop saying that. Lord Draven, you are dead." "I am not dead." "My lord, you are very dead. They told us yesterday. Your horse came back without you. Your guard captain came back without you. The steward announced it at noon. There is already a—" The old man crossed himself, an old gesture, one the priests at Hollow Reach had stopped requiring 30 years ago. "There is already a procession being planned. For the morning. The body is not yet back, they say. But the body will be brought back, they say, by the morning, and there will be a procession. And afterward, Counselor Ovind will—" "Oh, sus, my lord, I am not dead." "No, my lord, clearly you are not dead. Sit down, Os. Do not stand up. Do not go anywhere. Hal, shut what is left of the door. Lyra, come in." Lyra came in. The old man, Os, the one Hal had named at the fire 3 nights ago, the one who ran the armory at Hollow Reach. Os looked at her as she came through the door, and the thing happened that she was going to see happen, in one form or another for the rest of her life. He looked at her face. He took in the black cloak, the rough wool underneath, the hands that had not been a healer's hands for 3 months. He took in the way she walked. He took in, especially and unmistakably, her eyes. And she watched his face change the way faces do when you have just seen a thing you have no word for yet, and you know you are going to have to get a word for it, and you know the word is going to change your life. "Os," she said. "Healer," he said. "Not anymore." "No, healer, I do not think so either." She sat down across from him on a 3-legged stool. "Oh, Sass, my name is Lyra. You know my face. You saw it in the great hall on the Bone Moon. You watched the Alpha reject me. You know what I was. I am going to tell you what I am now, because we have no time for me to show you, and you are going to have to trust me without proof. And I am sorry for that. But the woman who had you told your lord was dead is moving at dawn, and we have only this one night to fix the thing she has broken. Are you listening?" "Yes, healer, Lyra." "I am not a healer anymore. I mean, I'm still a healer. I will always be a healer. But I'm also other things now. I've spent 3 months in the high country with a woman who taught me to read rooms. I can read rooms, Os. I can tell you which men in the hall tonight are Seraphine Volks and which are still yours without opening their mouths. I can tell you which of the guards at the gate will shoot if the Alpha rides up to his own door and which will lower their bows. I can do it in a way that will frighten you a little, but I need you to not be frightened yet. I need you to be useful first. Do you hear me?" "I hear you." "Good. How many men do you count as ours?" Os closed his eyes. He was counting. He was a man who had counted things for 40 years, and he did it the way some people prayed. 40, he said, finally. "Maybe 45. My 2 boys. Tem and his 6 stable hands. Garm's 20. If Garm is still Garm is still. Assume Garm is still. Garm's 20 then. 6 of the old kitchen men. The 2 priests from the old shrine. That is 45. Against how many of hers? There are 200 men in Hollow Reach who wear Draven colors. I do not know how many of them are still ours. I know 60 who are certainly hers. Another 80, I cannot say. And the garrison from Orin's Ford arrived this morning, Lyra. They are bivouacked on the east side of the main road. 160 of them, under a Captain Brant. Brant. Yes. Brant, who was sent by the council. Yes, healer. Lyra. She looked at Kael. Kael was standing against the wall by the door, arms folded, the scar livid in the dim light, and he was letting her run this conversation. And she noted that. and she did not have time to think about what it meant that he was letting her run this conversation. "Os," she said. "Yes. I need 3 things from you before the moon is halfway up tonight. Do you understand?" "Tell me." "First, a way in, not the main gate. A small door, a sally port, a sewer grate, anything. There will be one. Hollow Reach is 500 years old, and it always has a thing like that. The old well gate on the north wall. I know it. My father helped rebuild it." "Good. Second, a ledger." He blinked. "A ledger? You are the master of the armory. You have a ledger. It is your job to have a ledger. You write down every weapon that comes in and out of your armory. You write down every visitor who has come to the armory for 2 years. I want it." "Lyra, the ledger is at the armory. It is not—" "I know. Third thing, you're going to go back in tonight through that old well gate, and you're going to bring me that ledger. Do you understand what I'm going to do with it?" Os looked at her. It took him a moment. He was not a quick man, but he had been running the armory of Hollow Reach for 40 years, and he had been writing down the name of every lowland lordsman who had come to inspect it for the last 2 springs. And he had not asked himself until this moment why he had been asked to produce those men's measurements, and why he had been asked to fit them for blades out of the Draven forge. "Oh," he said, very quietly. "Oh, girl." "Yes, you are going to put names in front of a hall." "Yes, in front of the captains." "Yes, tonight. Tonight." He closed his eyes. "They will kill you," he said, "before you finish reading the second name. The ones who are hers will be armed. The ones who are mine will not be, because it is an indoor feast, because there is a procession in the morning. You will be reading names off a ledger in a room full of men with knives, Lyra." "Yes." "You will not get to the end of the list." "I know." "Then why—" "Because I do not need to get to the end of the list, Os. I need to get to the third name. Because the third name in your ledger, if I am right, and I am right, is a lowland man named Arvik, who came in on a writ stamped by Counselor Ovind and was fitted for a short sword in your forge 2 winters ago this spring. And if I read Arvik's name out loud in front of the hall, in front of Ovind with the writ in my other hand, then Ovind has to answer. Not to me. To the captains. And the captains, Os, the captains who are still yours, will do what captains do." "Which is what?" "They will remember that the oath they took was not to Ovind." There was a silence. Then the old man put his face in his hands. He did not cry. He just put his face in his hands, and he breathed. And after a moment he took his hands down, and he looked at Kael. "My lord," he said, "where did she come from?" Kael did not answer. Kael was looking at Lyra with an expression that she did not have time to look at too long, because if she looked at it too long, she was going to have to think about the way the bond at the base of her neck had been doing small, quiet things all day, and she did not want to think about that. Not tonight, not before a hall full of armed men. "Os," she said instead. "The ledger, the gate. Go." He went. She watched him go out into the dusk, and she watched him disappear between the trees on the path toward Hollow Reach, and she turned to Kael. "You understand," she said, "that when I walk into that hall tonight, you do not walk in with me." "Lyra." "You walk in after." "Lyra, I am not sending you into my hall alone. You are not sending me. I am going. And if you walk in with me, Seraphine will have us both killed before I read a single name. Because the story she has told the hall is that you are dead. And if you walk in alive and accompanied by an Omega with the wrong color eyes, she has exactly the story she needs. Alpha brings home a witch bewitches Alpha. Witch kills the Alpha's rightful intended. Ovind is appointed steward regent by emergency vote, and we are both buried by morning. Then how do we— I go in alone, Kael. I walk into your hall in front of the whole winter's company, unarmed, wearing my gray dress under this cloak, and I ask to be heard. I name myself. I remind them who I was on the Bone Moon. I let Seraphine see me alive. And then I read the ledger. I read names until someone stands up to kill me. And you walk in the moment someone stands up to kill me. That is a plan that has you standing in the middle of a hall of armed men while I wait outside. Yes. No. Kael. No, Lyra, I said no. I am not going to stand outside a door while someone stands up to kill you. I did that once, on the Bone Moon. I stood at a high table and watched my own hall prepare to chew you up. I am not doing it again. You will do it if I tell you to do it. No. Cale Draven. Lyra Ashen. They stared at each other. The fire was very small. Hal, in the corner, was carefully not looking at either of them, which was, Lyra noted, a trained man being trained. You said on the ridge, she said. Quieter now. You said you would walk in front of me with a sword until I told you to stop. You said that was the shape of this. I did. I am not telling you to stop. I'm telling you to wait. Those are different. They are the same words said with different teeth, Kael. Listen to me. If you walk in with me, Seraphine wins. If you walk in after me, the captains have a choice to make that they do not have if you are in the room already. I am not asking you to stand outside because I want to be brave. I am asking you to stand outside because that is where the shape of tonight needs you to stand. Do you hear me? He looked at her for a long time. Yes, he said. Good. Lyra? What? If the wrong one stands up first, then you come through the door. How fast? As fast as you can. He closed his eyes. All right, he said. All right. He opened his eyes. Lyra, he said. For the record. What? I do not agree with this. I know. I am doing it anyway. I know. Because you are telling me to. Because I am telling you to. He nodded once. Then because he was Kael Draven, and because he had not become the alpha of the Black Spine by being only one thing, he pushed off the wall of the hut, crossed the 3 steps between them, and put his hand, very briefly, on the base of her neck. Not on the bond mark. Not quite. On the back of her neck, just above it, palm warmed through her hair. Lyra Ashen, he said, quietly. I see you. She did not answer. Not because she did not have an answer. Because she did. And if she let the answer out tonight, the answer was going to live in her mouth when she walked into a hall of armed men, and she could not walk into that hall with an answer like that one in her mouth. Not tonight. Not yet. He took his hand off her neck. He stepped back. Go, he said. I will be at the well gate with Hal at midnight. If you do not come out by the 2nd hour of the morning, I come in with the sword and the devil, and I do not care who is still alive in there when I am done. That is not a plan. That is not a plan, no. That is a promise. Different thing. She almost smiled. She caught herself. The smile would live in her mouth too. Not tonight. Midnight, she said. Well gate. Midnight. She went out of the hut. Oss was waiting for her at the edge of the trees, the ledger in a leather satchel under his arm, his old face gray with terror, and with something else too, something that she did not recognize until she was 2 miles down the road with him, walking through the black pines toward the yellow lights of Hollow Reach, and she realized what it was. He was proud of her. He did not know her. He had met her less than an hour ago. He had heard her speak in his own language about things he had done for 2 years without understanding he was doing them, and he had watched her walk out of a charcoal burner's hut with a ledger that was going to put half his captains on a gallows, and he was, in the old, cold, proud way of old men who had served a bad lord and not known it until somebody finally gave them the word for it, proud of her. That was the first one too, like the assassin. The first was the one that set the line. She walked faster. The old well gate on the north wall of Hollow Reach was exactly where Oss had said it was. It was a hinged grate set into the stone, overgrown with dead ivy, the sort of thing a servant would use once a year to let the waste cart in and out of the yard behind the armory, and 2 generations of guards had forgotten existed. Oss lifted the grate. She went under it. She came up in a yard she had never seen before, behind a building she had been inside 100 times, and the smell of Hollow Reach hit her in the face like a hand. Wood smoke, hay, horse, iron, beer. A city she had grown up in, a city that had thrown her out in a wool dress at midnight 3 months ago, a city that did not yet know she had come back, and did not yet know what she had come back as. The hall was already lit. The procession for the Alpha's death, she thought, with a very cold, very small part of her mind. The procession is tomorrow. Tonight there is a vigil. The whole hall is in the Great Hall tonight, in black, drinking in memory of Alpha Kael Draven. Seraphine Volk is at the high table in mourning velvet. Ovind is at her right hand. Brant is somewhere near, in the captain's alcove. All of them are in one room. All of them. She walked. Not fast, not slow. She walked the way she had walked down the Great Hall 3 months ago, which was the last time this city had seen her walk, and she let her feet remember it. She had changed her dress. Os's wife had met her at a back door 3 streets from the keep, tears in her old eyes, and had put Lyra into the gray wool of a hall healer again. The same cut, the same sleeves, the same worn hem. The Draven black cloak she had folded and given to Hal at the charcoal pit, because she was not walking into that hall tonight wearing anything of Kael Draven's. She was walking in as the thing Kael Draven had thrown out. She reached the doors of the Great Hall. The guards on the doors were 2 men Lyra had never seen before. Not hers, not Kael's. New men. She read them in the half-second before they saw her, and she understood them both. Lowlanders, Seraphines, nervous, not clear on their orders past tonight. They did not have time to be clear on tonight. She did not use heat. She did not need to. She had learned in the cave that reading a person was most of using a person, and she read them both, and she lifted her hood from her face, and she looked at the one on the left. "Tell the steward," she said, "that the healer wishes to pay her respects to the Alpha in vigil." "The healer?" "Yes." "I do not know you, healer." "No. You would not. You are new. Tell the steward. The steward will know me. Ovind, tell him the word bone moon. He will not be pleased. Tell him anyway." The guard looked at his partner. The partner shrugged. It was the shrug of a man not paid enough to think about things. The first guard went inside. Lyra waited. Her heart was doing something she had thought it was not going to do. It was doing the thing it had done on the bone moon. The exact same thing. 2 uneven beats, then 3, then catching, then sure. She put her hand flat on her sternum. The warm thing was awake. It was fully awake. It was in fact uncoiling for the second time in her life, and she thought, with a small strange clarity, that it had been waiting to uncoil again since the slope in front of the cave, and that it had spent 6 days on a mountain pass being patient, and that she was going to find out tonight how patient it had actually been. The first guard came back. His face was a little gray. "He says," he said, "to send you in." "Thank you." The doors opened. The Great Hall of Hollowreach opened in front of her like a mouth. It was not the Great Hall of the Bone Moon. It was the Great Hall in black. Every table had been draped. Every torch had been dimmed. The dais at the far end was covered in dark wool, and there was a long carved box in front of the dais, waist-high, closed, that Lyra understood, with the same slow, sick clarity, was the Alpha's coffin, empty, waiting to be filled in the morning with whatever they had dragged down from a ditch outside Oren's Ford. Seraphine Volk sat at the high table in black velvet, black ribbon in her winter wheat hair, a small black cup in her hand. Her beautiful face in the firelight was the face of a widow in a ballad. Counselor Ovind sat at her right hand. Black wool, gray hair. The steward's chain of office heavy on his old chest, shining dully in the low light. The hall was full. Every captain, every lord, every warrior of rank, every visiting lowland noble who had ridden in for the procession, every one of them in black, every one of them drinking, every one of them armed, she noted, because a vigil was a thing you attended armed, because armed was how a vigil respected a dead alpha. She walked down the length of the hall. She had counted the paces the last time. She did not count them this time. She did not need to. She was reading faces as she went, reading captains, reading which ones were hers and which were Seraphine's, and she was making a map in the warm thing under her sternum that was as clean and clear as any map Mother Cree had ever had drawn of the human body. Garm, standing against the wall by the old shrine corner, hers. Tem, the master of horse, with his shoulders rolled forward like a man ready to take 3 steps, hers. Captain Brant, in the alcove by the high table, Seraphine's. A man she did not know, in lowland leather, standing behind Ovind's chair, Seraphine's. The priest at the foot of the coffin. She stopped at the priest. She stopped because the priest had lifted his head as she came, and she knew him. He was one of the old shrine priests, the ones Hal had named, The ones Oss had named. One of hers. And he was looking at her with tears in his eyes, because he too had been in the hall on the Bone Moon, and he had been standing in this hall for 6 days listening to the news that his Alpha was dead, and he was looking at the face of the Omega whose rejection he had witnessed, and something in him was doing arithmetic. She gave him a small, small nod. He straightened. She walked past the coffin. She did not look at it. She stopped at the foot of the dais. "Steward," she said. Her voice carried. She did not raise it. She had learned in 3 months on a mountain not to raise it. "I have come to pay my respects to the Alpha, and to bring a thing before this hall, before the vigil ends." Seraphine Volk looked up. She looked up slowly. Her eyes, in the low light, were the color of winter wheat too. Beautiful eyes. Eyes that had turned 3 months ago in the great hall on the Bone Moon, and not turned since, because Seraphine Volk had stopped doing anything that might require her to be surprised a long time ago. She saw Lyra. She knew her. She did the thing Lyra had been waiting for her to do. She went through the 3 expressions again, exactly the same 3 she had done at the claiming feast, in the same order. Confusion, understanding. The thing that wasn't hate yet but was going to be, very soon. And then, because Seraphine Volk was very good at what she was, she smiled. "The healer," she said. Soft. Pitched just loud enough for the hall. "The healer has come home." "Seraphine," Ovind said, quietly, warningly. "Let her speak, Ovind." Seraphine's black-sleeved hand drifted up, an open palm, a gesture of gentle permission. "She lost a lord tonight too, in her own way. Let her speak." Lyra smiled back at her. It was not a smile with any kindness in it. It was the smile Vesa had smiled at her on the ridge. Terrible. Not unkind. Terrible. "Thank you, my lady," Lyra said. She turned slowly to face the hall. "My name," she said, "is Lyra Ashen. Most of you know me. Some of you stitched me up for your wives. Some of you brought your children to my ward when the fever ran through the barracks last summer. Some of you were here on the Bone Moon, and you watched me walk down this hall, and you watched Alpha Kale Draven say what he said, and you watched me walk out the doors into the snow. I know you. I remember you. I see you all tonight." The hall had gone very quiet. She lifted the ledger. "I have spent the winter," she said, "in places you have not. I have learned things. I have been told things. I have read things tonight in a book I borrowed from your master of arms. Oss has been keeping a record for 2 years of every lowland man Counselor Ovind has sent into this keep to be fitted for a Draven-forged blade. It is a long list. I am going to read from it. I am going to read the first 3 names, not more. I am going to read 3 names, and then I am going to ask the steward in front of his hall to account for them." Ovind had gone white. Seraphine's smile had not moved. That, Lyra thought, with a distant fragment of professional respect, was what made her good. The smile had not moved, but the hand on the cup had. "The first name," Lyra said, "is Arvik of Westdale. Writ stamped by the steward's seal, arrived at Hollowreach 18 months ago, was fitted for a short sword at your forge in the week of his arrival. Is currently, according to the Master of Horse, billeted in the East Barracks under the colors of the Oran's Ford garrison." Captain Brant, in the alcove, began to rise. "The second name," Lyra said, and her voice rose now, not loud, but clean, clear, the voice of a healer reading a fever chart in a ward full of frightened people, "is Hearn of the Thornfield, writ stamped by the steward's seal, arrived at Hollowreach 14 months ago, fitted for 2 knives, also currently billeted." Captain Brant was on his feet. He was reaching for something under his cloak. She saw him. The warm thing saw him. The whole hall saw him. And so did Garm. Garm, the beta, with the dent in his skull. The captain of the Alpha's personal guard who had walked Lyra Ashen to the south gate of this city 3 months ago with his own cloak over her arm. Garm moved. He did not shout. He did not announce himself. He crossed the length of the great hall at a dead run, 6 paces ahead of any other man, and he took Captain Brant off his feet from the side with the whole weight of himself and drove him down into a trestle table and put the point of his own knife in the flat of Brant's throat before Brant could get whatever he was reaching for out from under his cloak. The hall erupted. It did not erupt the way Lyra had feared. It did not erupt into a massacre. It erupted into the shape she had been praying for in the way a woman who would not speak the word prayer prayed. a clean, hard, terrified shape, where the men who were Seraphines understood in one single breath that they had been seen, and the men who were Kael's understood in the same breath that they had not been abandoned. Tem, the master of horse, drew his sword. Os's two boys at the back of the hall drew theirs. The priest at the foot of the coffin, who had spent 6 days in vigil for an alpha he did not believe was dead, put himself between the dais and the lowland noble in leather behind Ovin's chair, and the noble stopped moving. Lyra did not move. She stood exactly where she was, at the foot of the dais, with a ledger in her hand and her hood back and her eyes, her bone moon-colored eyes, on Seraphine Volk. And Seraphine, who had not yet stopped smiling, let the smile finally go. "You," she said. "Me," Lyra said. "You stupid little—" Seraphine. The doors at the back of the hall blew open. Alpha Kael Draven walked in. He did not walk in fast. He walked in the way he had always walked in, the way he had walked down 3 steps on the bone moon, the way men had written songs about for 9 years. And he stopped 6 paces inside his own hall and looked down its length at his own coffin, empty on its trestle, and at his own council of lords staring at him with their mouths open. And he did what no ballad singer had ever written about him doing. He laughed. Once. Short. Dry. Not a kind laugh. The laugh of an alpha who has walked into his own funeral and decided, in the first half-second, that he was going to be very unkind about it. "Hollow Reach," he said. His voice carried. It had always carried. "I am sorry to disappoint you, but I seem not to be dead." Nobody spoke. He walked the length of the hall. He walked past his captains. He walked past his lords. He walked past the coffin meant for him. He stopped at Lyra's shoulder, and he did not touch her, and he did not look at her, but he turned to face the dais beside her, and he put his right hand on the hilt of his long knife. "Continue," he said. To her, not to the hall. "Finish the list." She looked at him. He looked at the dais. "The third name," she said, and her voice at last was loud enough to ring off the stone at the back of the hall, "is a man who is already standing up behind Counselor Ovind, and whose face every man in this room who still wears Draven colors is about to memorize." Every head in the room turned. The lowland noble behind Ovind's chair, the man Lyra had not recognized at the back of the hall, froze in place, half risen, one hand halfway to the clasp of his cloak. Across the hall, at the wall, Garm looked up from his knee on Captain Brant's chest. He looked at that lowland man. His old face, under its dented skull, went slack for one single second with recognition. Then it closed, the way a door closes, and Garm stood up off Brant, and he walked quite slowly across the flagstones of the great hall of Hollow Reach toward the dais where Seraphine Volk sat in her black velvet, and Counselor Ovind sat in his chain of office. And the lowland man stood frozen with his hand at his cloak. And as Garm walked one by one, not in unison, not in a wave, but in a scatter like the first drops of rain, the captains of Hollow Reach, the ones who had been Kael's before 2 winters ago, the ones who had been his all along, the ones Seraphine Volk had not yet been able to replace, stood up from their chairs. Not one of them drew a weapon. They did not need to. They just stood. And Lyra Ashen, 21 years old, in a gray wool dress with a worn hem, with a ledger in her hand and the warm thing in her chest, fully awake, watched the hall that had thrown her out in a blizzard 3 months ago rise to its feet around her. Not for their alpha, and not for their steward, and not for the woman in mourning velvet who had run a 2-year coup through their own table, but for her, for the first time. She did not smile, she did not cry. She only, very softly, under her breath, the way a woman says a thing for herself alone at the beginning of a long road, said, "All right." The first captain to kneel was Tem. He did not do it well. His knees were bad. He had been thrown by a horse the previous summer, and his left one did not quite bend all the way anymore. And he went down in stages, one knee at a time, and when he was down, he put both fists flat on the flagstones in front of him and bowed his head. Not to Kael. That was the part that hollowed Lyra out in a way she would think about for years. He bowed his head at her. Then Os's 2 boys. Then Garm, halfway across the hall, without ever breaking his walk. Then the priest from the shrine corner who did not kneel. He was too old for it and too done with bending to anybody, but who bowed his head and put his hand over his heart. Then the captains. Not all of them. About half. About a third, maybe. The ones who had been Kael's from before the 2 winters. The ones who had felt something go sideways in the last 18 months and had not had a word for it until tonight. They went down in a long, ragged line along the east wall of the hall, and every one of them went down facing her, and Lyra Ashen, who had walked down this hall in a wool dress 3 months ago to be told in front of 1,000 witnesses that she was nothing, stood very still and tried to remember how to breathe in for 4. It was Kael who saved her. He did not move to touch her. He did not step forward to claim the moment. He simply turned his head slightly to the side and said, pitched low enough that only she could hear it, "Breathe, Lyra." "I am breathing." "No, you aren't." She breathed. In for 4. Hold. Out for 8. The hall had gone so quiet that the sound of her own exhale came back at her off the stone, and she realized, with the part of her mind that was still in charge of noticing useful things, that she could hear Seraphine Volk's cup rattling, very faintly, against the edge of the high table. The cup was rattling because Seraphine's hand was shaking. Seraphine's hand had not shaken on the bone moon. Seraphine's hand had not shaken 6 days ago when she had announced the Alpha dead in front of this hall. Seraphine's hand was shaking now, and Lyra, reading it the way she had learned to read rooms, understood that this was not fear. Seraphine Volk was not afraid. Seraphine Volk, at this moment, was furious in the particular way that beautiful, careful, 2 years in the making people are furious when their plan fails in front of witnesses. That, Lyra thought, was worse than fear. Fear could be talked to. Fury like that could not. "Steward Ovind," Kael said. Ovind did not stand. He could not, Lyra thought. Her new reading told her that his knees had gone out from under him the moment Kael had walked through the doors, that Ovind had been, in some real biological sense, running on his own certainty of Kael's death for 6 days, and that certainty had been a chair under him, and the chair had just been kicked away. "My lord," Ovind said. His voice had gone to paper. "The chain. My lord. The steward's chain, Ovind. Off your neck. On the table in front of me. Now." Ovind, with hands that Lyra watched closely, because she could not help watching closely, lifted the heavy gold chain of stewardship off his own neck and laid it on the black-draped wood in front of him. "My lord, I am not finished. Arvik of Westdale, Hearn of the Thornfield, the man behind your chair, stand them up against the east wall." "My lord." "Ovind, stand them up." Ovind stood them up. He did it himself, not the guards. Ovind, the steward of the Seal of the Black Spine for 11 years, walked around the high table on legs that did not fully believe in themselves. And he tapped each of the 3 men on the shoulder, and they went to the east wall. And they stood with their backs to the stone, and their faces, Lyra noted, were the faces of men who had not yet done the arithmetic on how fast the night had just turned. "Seraphine," Kael said. She looked at him. "Do not," she said. Soft, still beautiful, still in control of her mouth, if nothing else. "Do not do this in front of the hall, Kael. Whatever you are going to say, take me into a private room. Take me to the council chamber. Do me the courtesy. The courtesy." "Yes." "The courtesy." "Yes, Kael. The courtesy of. She stopped. Kael was very still. He had not moved since he had stopped beside Lyra's shoulder. But Lyra, who knew by now how an alpha breathed when he was about to do a thing, felt the shift in him and put her hand very lightly on his forearm. "Kael," she said. "Lyra." "No. Lyra. Not you. Not tonight. You have a hall to hold. If you kill her at the high table tonight, you kill her for me, and I did not ask for that. Do you hear me?" He heard her. She watched him hear her. She watched the muscle along his jaw twitch once, and settle, and twitch once more, and settle. He had not taken his eyes off Seraphine, but he had heard her. "Then what?" he said, to Lyra, quietly. "A trial. She has run a coup. Yes. A trial, Kael, in front of the hall, tomorrow, with witnesses, with the ledger, with Arvik and Hearn and the third man, I do not care what his name is, with all of them on the stand, with the 5 counselors who voted for the year and a day sitting where the hall can see them, and a man from every holding within 3 days' ride in the seats of the gallery. A trial, Kyle, not a dagger over a supper table. Do you understand me? You want a trial. I want a city that does not have another Seraphine Volk in it in 10 years because nobody remembers what it cost to grow the first one. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, finally, he said, All right. All right? You are right, Lyra. All right. A trial. He turned to the hall. Captain Garm, he said. His voice carried the way it always carried, a voice built for stone walls and for the backs of halls. Take Counselor Ovind and Lady Volk to the East Tower, not the cells. The tower. 2 guards inside the room, 4 outside the door, at all times, and every watch change reported to me in writing. Captain Tem. The 3 men at the east wall to the cells, separate cells, no windows, no visitors, no messages in or out. Understood? Yes, my lord, said Garm and Tem, almost together. The steward's chain stays where Ovind left it. The hall will decide tomorrow who wears it next, not me, the hall. He paused. His hand had gone to his hip again, to the hilt of the long knife, but this time it was not a man about to draw. It was a man steadying himself. Captain Brant. Garm had Brant on his feet now, with his arm twisted back. Brant's throat had a thin line of blood on it where Garm's knife had gone in just enough to remind him. Brant's face was gray. Brant, Cale said, your garrison is bivouacked outside the east wall. My lord, they are to be stood down before dawn. You will write the order. Tem will carry it. You will not speak to any man of your garrison yourself. If a single rider of Orin's Ford draws a weapon before sunrise, I will hold you personally responsible in a way that your grandchildren will still be talking about at winter fires. Are we clear? My lord, Are we clear? Yes, my lord. Write it, now, at that table. Brant wrote it, at that table. Garm held the ink. While Brant wrote, Kyle, finally, turned his head and looked at Lyra. He looked at her the way he had looked at her in the slope in front of Vessa's cave, like a man seeing 2 of her at once and unable to reconcile them. But something had changed in his face since then. On the slope, he had looked at her as if he was trying to figure out which version was real. Now, in the great hall of Hollow Reach, under 100 kneeling and standing men, with his own empty coffin on a trestle behind her, he was looking at her as if he had decided both versions were real, and he did not know yet what that meant for him. Lyra, he said. Kyle, will you stand beside me while I address the hall? No. Lyra, see? Kale, no. I am not your consort. I am not your mate. I am not your partner standing at your shoulder at a high table. We have had this conversation. I told you on the mountain. I came down the mountain to do a thing. The thing is not finished. But my part of it, for tonight, is finished. You address the hall. I will be in the ward. The ward, Kyle, the infirmary, the place with cots and willow bark in it. Mother Cree is there. I would like to see her. I would like her to see me. I would like to be the one to tell her that she did not raise a healer for nothing, even if the healer has gone and become something else. Do you understand me? He looked at her for a very long moment. Yes, he said. Go. She went. She did not look back. If she had looked back, she would have had to see the hall standing up for her, and she was not ready for that yet. If she had looked back, she would have had to see Kyle's face, and she was not ready for that yet either. She walked the length of the great hall, past the coffin and the trestles and the bowed heads of the men who had saluted her, and out the doors at the back of the hall, into the torch-lit cold of the main courtyard, and she did not stop walking until she was at the door of the infirmary. Mother Cree was there. Mother Cree was sitting on her own 3-legged stool by the door of the ward, 68 years old, half blind in one eye, with her hands folded in her lap and her back very straight, and Lyra understood as soon as she saw her that Mother Cree had been sitting on that stool in that exact position since the bells had rung in the town, which had been about an hour ago, which was how long, in the old woman's count, it had taken for the news to spread from the great hall. Mother Cree looked up. Her good eye went over Lyra slowly, the way it had gone over 100 patients, and Lyra watched her go through the tally. Feet, hands, eyes, throat, skin. The old habitual healer's tally, and Lyra also watched her arrive at the eyes and stop. Ah, Mother Cree said. Yes. Come here, girl. Lyra went to her. She knelt. It was the first time she had knelt to anyone since Vessa's salve on her feet 3 months ago. She knelt in front of the old woman's stool, and she put her forehead very lightly against Mother Cree's knee, and Mother Cree's old hand came down on the back of her head. And Lyra did not cry because she had already decided she was not going to cry tonight, but her shoulders shook once under that old hand, and the hand did not move, and neither did she for something like a full minute.
I went up the mountain, Lyra said, finally, into the wool of Mother Cree's skirt. I thought you might. You thought I thought, when Garm came back that night without his cloak, that you had not taken the south road. Child, I have been a healer for 50 years. I know the Omegas who go south, and I know the ones who go up. You were always one of the ones who went up. You never said. You never needed me to. Lyra lifted her head. Mother Cree's good eye was wet, but her mouth was firm, the way it always was. The mouth of a woman who had watched 2 husbands and a son die on her cots and had not once allowed the people in her ward to see her break down, because the people in her ward were also dying and did not need to watch her do it on top of their own work. You came back, Mother Cree said. I came back. Why? Because she would have burned the city, Mother. And because... Because what? And because, girl. Lyra was quiet. Mother Cree waited. The old woman had always been the best in the world at waiting. And because I did not want to spend the rest of my life being a woman he threw away, Lyra said, finally. Ah, that is a small reason. That is not a small reason, Lyra. Mother, no, listen, the small reasons are the ones that carry us the furthest. The big ones wear out. The big ones, duty, honor, the kingdom, the innocent lives, those ones run out 2 days into a black spine winter, and they leave you sitting in a snowbank wondering what the point of anything is. The ones that get you up out of the snowbank and moving again are the small ones, the mean ones, the ones you do not want to say out loud because you were raised not to. Mother Cree's old thumb stroked, once, the line of Lyra's jaw. I did not raise a saint, girl. I raised a healer. Healers know that a person is not a good person and a bad person. A person is a body that wants to live and a mind that wants to matter. You came back because she tried to erase you. Good. That is a fine reason. Do not be ashamed of it. The city is saved as a consequence. Be glad of the consequence. Do not dress up the reason. Buzz. Lyra laughed. It was a short laugh, half a sob. It surprised her. I missed you, she said. I know. Mother. What? My eyes. I saw. Does it frighten you? Mother Cree looked at her for a long, honest second. A little. Ah, not because you have them, child, because of what they will ask of you. I am 68 years old. I do not have a long road left. What you're carrying is a long road. You will be tired, Lyra Ashen, in ways you cannot yet imagine. Sit down on the stool. I will make you tea. Mother, I should not... Sit down. She sat down. Mother Cree got up slowly, the way old women get up, and went to make tea. The trial was on the 3rd day. Kael had wanted it on the 2nd. Lyra had overruled him. The writers need time, she had said, in the small council room off the great hall, where the 2 of them and Garm and Oss were sitting around a table looking at a map. A man from every holding within 3 days' ride. That means riders going out tonight and men coming in tomorrow and the day after. If you try to do it on the 2nd day, you have half a hall. Not good enough. We do this in front of a full gallery, or we do not do it at all. Citris Sataos. Lyra. Every hour Seraphine has to work in that tower is an hour she spends in a tower with 4 of your men outside the door, Kael. She cannot work. Her network is in pieces. Her garrison has been stood down. Ovind is under guard and writing his confession as we speak. If she had a move left, she would have made it that first night. She does not have a move. She is sitting in the tower counting minutes. Good. Let her count. 3 days is a long time to count minutes. Yes, it is. Lyra put her palm flat on the map. That is also part of it. Kael had looked at her with something that was not quite surprise and not quite admiration and not quite the thing he had been not saying to her with his eyes,
since he had put his hand on the back of her neck in the charcoal burner's hut. And he had said very quietly, "All right." So 3 days. On the morning of the third day, the great hall of Hollowreach was as full as Lyra had ever seen it. Fuller. The gallery above the main floor, the one that had been empty on the Bone Moon because the nobility only filled the gallery for weddings and coronations, was packed to the rail with the men she had asked for. Holding lords from 3 valleys, old farmers with winter mud still on their boots, the master of the Charcoal Burners Guild, in a black wool coat that did not fit him, standing next to a thin gray woman Lyra recognized, after a slow moment, as Oss's wife. A stonemason from Oren's Ford, a miller from the Thornfield, a blacksmith whose apprentice Lyra had stitched up 4 winters ago for a forge burn. Witnesses. Not of the coup. Of the country that the coup had been run over. Lyra did not sit on the dais. Cale had asked her to. Lyra had refused. "I read the ledger," she had said. "I am the one who named the first 3 names. That is the wrong person to sit on the dais, Cale. That is the witness stand, not the judge's chair." And she had put herself in a plain gray dress with a dark gray mantle over it, no draven black, she had been very careful, at the witness stand where any woman of the town might have stood, and had waited for Oven to be brought in. Oven was brought in first. He did not fight. He had not fought since the first night. He had spent 3 days writing. Lyra had asked for it, and Cale had ordered it, and Oss had sat with him hour after hour, while his old hand had moved across sheet after sheet of paper, because Ovind had turned out to be one of those men who, once the chair was kicked out from under him, would write down absolutely anything you asked him to, as long as you gave him the ink. He walked to the front of the hall with his head down and sat on the bench where he was told, and did not look at anyone. Captain Brant was brought in second. Arvik, Hearn, and the third man. His name had turned out to be Voss, and he was, as Lyra had suspected, a second son of a minor lowland lord whose house had been feeding Seraphine Volk's network for 2 winters, were brought in third. Seraphine was brought in last. She wore red. Of course she did. Lyra had assumed she would. Lyra had, in fact, specifically not mentioned to Cale what Seraphine ought to wear, because she had known that if left to her own devices, Seraphine Volk would make exactly this decision, and the decision was going to tell the hall more about her than any speech Lyra could make on her own. The hall saw her come through the doors, and a long, slow breath went through the gallery. She had not lost weight. She had not lost her hair. She had not lost, as far as Lyra could read her, a single ounce of what she had been. She walked between her 2 guards down the length of the hall in a gown the color of a deep wound, and she did not look at the ledger on the table in front of the dais, and she did not look at Ovind on his bench, and she did not look at Lyra standing at the witness stand, and she walked with her chin up and her shoulders back. And every old man in the gallery who had been on the fence about her, Lyra understood in one cold moment, unfenced. Cale, on the dais, did not stand. He watched her come. He watched her take her place on the bench in front of him. He waited. Lyra did not testify first. She had also insisted on this. "Oven first," she had said. Then Brant. Then the 3 men. Then Oss, with the ledger. Then, if it is needed, and only if it is needed, me. Cale had not argued. Oven testified for 2 hours. He cried through most of it. He was an old man, and he had been broken very badly by the last 3 days. And he sat on the witness bench with his gray head bowed, and he told the hall everything. The 2 winters, the meetings in the small dining room of the steward's quarters, the letters from Seraphine's father, who had been at the very least aware, and who was now the subject of a second set of writers that had gone out the night of the great hall. The 5 counselors, he named them, who had voted for the year and a day. The specific phrase Seraphine had used about the Draven blood, that it was, she said, thin at the root and curdled at the top, a phrase which went through the gallery like a thrown stone. Brant testified for 40 minutes. He had less to say. He had been a soldier doing what he had been told, by a steward he trusted, for a cause, the stability of the line, that he had been assured was the cause of his alpha. He did not cry. He did not ask for mercy. He named his subordinates who had been in on it, and the ones who had not. Lyra watched him do it, and she decided privately that she was going to recommend not order. It was not her place to order. that Brant be allowed to keep his life. A man who did not cry and did not ask for mercy and told the truth once caught was a man who could, with the right collar, be useful in a new hall. Arvik, Hearn, and Voss testified in that order. Voss tried to lie for the first 10 minutes. Lyra read him doing it the way she had read the assassin at the cave, and Kael, on the dais, without looking at her, tapped his forefinger, once, against the arm of his chair. The tap meant, "You see it?" Yes. Her tap back meant, "I see it." Voss kept lying. Lyra did not use heat. She did not need to. She had thought very carefully about this moment, about the temptation to use the warm thing in front of the gallery, to make an example, to show the hall what she was. And she had decided, after a full night awake in the old ward, that she was not going to show them. Not today. Not here. The warm thing had had one public use, on the slope in front of Vessa's cave, and it had been the right one. The second public use would be the one that set the rule forever. And she was not going to set the rule in a courtroom, so she did not use it. She simply watched Voss lie, and when he had lied himself into the corner where even the gallery could see the corner, she said quietly, from the witness stand, "Voss of Westdale, you were fitted for a knife in Oss's forge. You were fitted with it on the 14th of the month of the long hunt 2 winters ago. You signed for it. The signature is in the ledger on the table behind me. The ledger has been read out to the hall. Would you like to stop lying now?" He stopped lying. Oss came last, with the ledger. He read it out. The whole ledger. 211 names. Some of them were innocent. Most of them were not. He read for an hour and a quarter. When he was done, the hall was so silent that when a man in the back coughed, 3 people turned to look. Kael, on the dais, finally stood. "Seraphine Volk," he said. She looked up at him. "You have heard the witnesses." "I have, my lord." "Do you wish to speak in your own defense?" "I do." "Speak." She stood up. She did it gracefully. She had been raised to stand up gracefully. She turned, not to Kael, but to the gallery, and Lyra thought, the warm thing thought for her, "Oh, you are good," because she was. Seraphine Volk, at this moment, was not a woman defending herself. She was a woman performing for the only audience left that she thought she could still win. "Lords of the Holdings," she said. Her voice was steady, beautiful. The voice of a woman who had been coached in rooms like this since she was 12 years old. "You have heard, for the last 4 hours, a great many words. You have heard that I am a traitor. You have heard that I schemed. You have heard that I seduced a counselor and plotted against my oldest friend. I will not deny that I have done things that this hall may find distasteful. I have made choices. I have lived in the world as it is, not as the healers in their wards imagine it to be. And yes, I have loved, imperfectly, and I have been loved imperfectly in return." Her eyes went at last to Kael, not to Lyra, to Kael. "But I stand before you," she said, "not to defend myself as a woman. A woman can be judged. I accept it. I stand before you to say one thing, and only one thing. The thing I did because I believed, and I still believe, that the blood of this territory cannot be given to a rejected Omega with yellow eyes who climbed out of a mountain cave and walked back into this hall with a ledger somebody else had written. You are good men. You love your Lord. You love your land. I ask you only this. Look at her. Look at her face. And ask yourselves, is that a woman? Is that anything you have ever seen before? Or is that something the Black Spine gave birth to up in that cave and sent down here wearing a gray dress to wear your alpha's skin? A murmur went through the gallery. It was small. It was not a roar, but it was there. And Lyra from the witness stand felt the shape of it land in the warm thing under her sternum, and she understood that Seraphine Volk had played the one card she had left, and it was a card that had been played in halls like this for 1,000 years, and had almost always worked. Kael drew breath to answer. Lyra held up her hand, not high, just a lift of 2 fingers at the level of the witness rail. Kael saw it. Kael closed his mouth. Lady Volk, Lyra said. Seraphine turned. Healer? Not a healer. No, I suppose not. Do you know what I am? I have told the hall what I think you are.
Yes. Now I am going to tell the hall what I am. She came out from behind the witness stand.
She walked, in the plain gray dress and the dark gray mantle, into the open space in front of the dais, and she stopped, and she turned in a slow half circle so that the gallery could see her, and the benches could see her, and the men at the back of the hall could see her. She let them look. Vesa had taught her, 3 months ago in a cave, to let people look. The word is the beginning of the end. As long as you are the thing they do not have a word for, you have the room.
I am an Omega, she said. I was born in Omega. I was born in a village that Seraphine Volk's father's raiders burned when I was 9 years old. I do not expect the lady to remember. I expect her father does. I came to Hollow Reach with my mother's blood on the hem of my dress, and Mother Cree took me in, and I grew up in the ward, and I learned to stitch wounds and mix willow bark and tell a fever from an infection, and I was, for 12 years, a hall healer of this keep. Some of you, in this gallery, know me from that work. Raise your hand if I have ever put a stitch in you or yours. Please raise it. Hands went up, not a forest, not a sea, but more than a few, scattered all through the gallery. A farmer in the second row. The stonemason from Oran's Ford. 2 young warriors behind him. The miller. A woman Lara did not know who had brought a baby in for fever 2 years ago, whose baby had lived. Thank you, she said. Put them down. They put them down. On the bone moon, she said. 3 months ago, I came into this hall, and a bond between my body and the Alpha's body triggered across the room. I did not ask for it. Neither did he. The Alpha rejected me for reasons that he and I have discussed since, and that the hall does not need to hear from me because they are his reasons to tell. I was walked out the south gate in a blizzard. I did not take the south road. I went up into the Black Spine. The gallery had gone quiet again. She could hear very faintly a child somewhere high up on the back bench asking its mother something in a whisper. I lived there for 3 months, she said, with a woman named Vesa. I am not going to tell you what she taught me, not because it is secret, because you would not have the words for it, and neither do I, and I will not stand in front of you and make up a word so that you can take it home and be afraid of it. I will only tell you 3 things. She lifted one finger. 1. I did not come down that mountain to take the Alpha's hall. I came down that mountain because 3 days after he rejected me, he woke up in the night and I woke up with him, 100 miles away. And I understood that the bond had not broken. And I understood that nothing I had been taught as a healer about bonds was going to hold. And I began to be afraid of what I was going to become if I did not get help. Vesa was help. She fed me. She taught me to breathe. When the Alpha came up the mountain to kill me on Seraphine Volk's orders, she let that sentence hang. The gallery had a reaction. She let it have it. On Seraphine Volk's orders, conveyed by a counselor in her bed, the Alpha did not do it. He brought me information I needed. We came down together. I came here alone the first night because I did not want this hall to think I had come home under his arm. I came home under my own feet. Do you understand me? Nobody answered. She lifted a second finger. 2. The Lady Volk has asked you to look at my face and ask yourselves if I am a woman. I will save you the trouble. I am a woman. I am a woman who was born in a village that her father burned. I am a woman who was raised in your ward. I am a woman who put stitches in your sons. I am also, and this is the part she wants you to be afraid of, a woman who can read a room. I can read this room right now. I can read the holding lord in the second row who is going to stand up in a moment and ask me a question about his son. I can read the young warrior behind him who has been in love for 2 years with the daughter of the blacksmith and has not said anything, and is afraid that if what I am is real, then everyone who has a small secret in this hall will be read. I can read Captain Brandt on his bench, who is resigned to die. I can read the Alpha on his dais, who is... Her voice did not falter. Who is trying not to look at me, because we have agreed he will not look at me until this is over. I can read the Lady Volk. I can read her right now. She is afraid. Not of me. She has been afraid of me since I walked through the doors 3 nights ago. What she is afraid of now, in this exact moment, is that the holding lord in the second row is going to ask me that question about his son, and I am going to answer it, and he is going to believe me. She let that land.
The holding lord in the second row was an older man with a gray beard. He had leaned forward an inch. His mouth had opened. He had not yet spoken. "Go on, my lord," she said, quietly. "Ask." He looked at her. He looked at her for a long moment. He had not expected to be named. He had not expected any of this. But he was a holding lord, and he had come here to sit in a gallery and listen, and now a woman in a gray dress was telling him that he had a question, and he did. And there was no use pretending he did not. "Healer," he said. "Horse, my son." "Yes. He has been sick for 2 winters. Nobody knows what. The healer's at my holding. I know. Nat. They cannot tell me. He does not fever. He does not bleed. He only goes gray, slowly, and I know, my lord." Her voice was gentle. "It is his liver," she said. "I cannot see it from here, but I can tell you by the way you sit in your chair that you have been sitting with him, and by the way you hold your left shoulder that he leans on your left side when he is weak, and by the way your mouth shakes when you say the word gray, that you have watched him go yellow at the corners of his eyes. It is his liver, my lord. It is something slow. It is not yet something beyond a healer's reach. Come to the ward tomorrow with him, and Mother Cree and I will look at him. It will be all right. Or," she looked at him, clear-eyed, "it will be as all right as it can be. I will not lie to you about it, but it will not be nothing." The old lord's eyes had filled. He did not wipe them. He did not sit back. He sat there with a gallery of 200 men watching him, and he nodded once, slowly, like a man hearing something very large and very private. "Thank you," he said. "My lord." She lifted her third finger. "3," she said, "to the whole hall. The Lady Volk wants you to be afraid of what I am. That is her last card. It is a good card. She has played it well. I will not pretend otherwise. What I will tell you is this. I am not asking to rule. I am not asking for the steward's chain. I am not asking to sit on the dais. I am not asking to marry the alpha. He knows this. I have told him this on a mountain, and again in a hut, and again last night in the ward where Mother Cree can hear. I have refused all of it. What I am asking for, from this hall, from the holdings, from the men who have stitches in them that I put there, is one thing and one thing only." She looked up at the gallery. She let her eyes, the bone moon-colored eyes, the things Seraphine had told them to be afraid of, go across them, row by row, slowly, with nothing in them but attention. "I am asking," she said, "for the right to stay." The hall breathed. "Not in the keep," she said. "In the town, in the old ward, with Mother Cree. I'm asking to be allowed to work. I'm asking to be allowed to read the rooms of this city quietly, in the background, for the rest of the Alpha's life, so that no other Seraphine Volk grows up in this hall for 2 winters without any of us noticing. That is all. That is my whole ask. You do not have to be afraid of me. You only have to let me work." She put her hand down. Silence. It was not, she realized later, a dramatic silence. It was the kind of silence a room goes into when a great many people are thinking at once. The holding lord in the second row was still nodding, slowly. The miller had one hand on his chin. The young warrior behind him was looking sideways at a girl Lyra did not know, who was looking back at him. Ossa's wife, in the gallery, had both hands pressed to her mouth. Seraphine Volk, on her bench, did not speak. She knew. Lyra could read her. Seraphine knew. The card had been played and the card had not worked, and Seraphine Volk, who had spent 2 winters building a story in which Lyra Ashen was a monster, had just watched her opponent, in a gray dress, stand in front of the gallery and ask for nothing. Kael, on the dais, stood up. "The hall will retire," he said. "The holding lords will confer. We will reconvene at sundown for the verdict." The verdict at sundown was this: Seraphine Volk, guilty. Exiled for life to her father's southern estates, stripped of her holdings in the Black Spine, forbidden to come within 100 miles of Hollow Reach on pain of death. Her father, under investigation by the Lowland Council, pending further riders. Councillor Ovind, guilty, stripped of the chain, confined to his own estate for the rest of his life under guard, with his ledgers and his letters and the slow, quiet task of writing out every name he had ever dealt with. He would die there, in 6 years, of a fever Mother Cree would have been able to treat had he been anywhere near her. The 5 counselors who had voted for the year and a day, 2 exiled, 2 stripped of their seats and allowed to live. One, the oldest, a man named Brecken, who had been manipulated more than he had plotted, allowed to retire. Kael had argued for harsher. Lyra had argued for lighter. The holding lords had, after a long afternoon of talking, gone with Lyra. Captain Brant, pardoned, demoted. Sent to the Orange Ford garrison as a common rider, to serve under the man who had been his own lieutenant. He would, in 6 years, save that lieutenant's life in a raid on the Southern Pass and be promoted back to sergeant, and he would die an old man in his bed, which was more than he had expected. Arvik, Hearn, and Voss hanged at dawn. Seraphine watched it from her window in the east tower before she was taken south. That was the last thing anybody in Hollow Reach ever knew her to do. Lyra Ashen did not take the dais. She did not take the steward's chain. She did not take rooms in the keep. She took, as she had asked, the old healer's quarters behind the ward, with Mother Cree across the hall and a window that looked out over the kitchen gardens. And she went back to work. She was not only a healer. Everybody understood that now. The old lord brought his son, and she and Mother Cree did what they could. And the boy lived 8 more years and grew strong enough, in the end, to inherit his father's holding and marry and have 2 daughters of his own. And every one of those winters, the old lord sent a wagon of wheat to the ward at Hollow Reach, because he had said he would, and he was the kind of man who did what he said. She read rooms. She read them quietly. She read counselors and merchants and visiting lords. And once a year or so she went, in her gray dress, up to the Alpha's table for a private conversation about a man she had noticed, and the man was quietly removed from rooms he should not have been in, and the hall of Hollow Reach, for the rest of Kyle Draven's life, was not taken over by a second Seraphine Volk or a first of anything else. The warm thing under her sternum, which Vessa had fed all winter, and which Lyra fed ever after with breath and silence and willow bark, and the small, hard, honest work of sitting at a fevered child's bedside at 3 in the morning, never again asked her to kill a man. She kept the line she had set on the slope in front of Vessa's cave. The first had been the one. She did not add to it. She and Kyle Draven did not marry. They did not mate. The bond did not break. It did not, either of them discovered slowly over the next decade, need to be consummated to be carried. It sat at the base of both of their necks, the cold coal, the low lamp, and it kept them, in a way Kyle described once, very late in a conversation in his small council room, as the most tiring and most honest thing in either of our lives, aware of each other across any distance in the Black Spine. He came to the ward some nights, not for any reason anyone in the keep wrote down. He came, and he sat on the 3-legged stool Mother Cree had died on, and he drank tea. And he and Lyra talked about the holdings, and about the men at the council table, and about the weather in the high pass, and about Vessa once or twice. Vessa, who had come down off the mountain in the 3rd year and had taken a cottage 2 valleys over, and who wrote Lyra a letter once a season in a spidery hand, and who had never again said the word mate in Lyra's hearing. He asked her once, in the 5th year, if she was happy. She thought about it for a long time. "Not happy," she said. "Not the way the singers mean. I think I am the thing they do not have the word for, and I think I am all right with being that, Kael, which is not the same as happy, but it is close enough for me." He nodded. He did not argue. He had stopped arguing with her, mostly, around the 3rd year. He was learning. He was, it turned out, a slow learner and a kind one, once the edges came off. And he lived to be 58 years old, and when he died, in his bed, of a wound from a raid that went wrong in his 57th winter, Lyra was sitting beside him with her hand flat on his sternum, and she was moving heat. Not out of him, into him, slowly, carefully. The way Vessa had taught her the moving of heat went both ways. She kept him warm, at the end, in the way that only she and all of the Blackspine could have kept him warm, and he died holding her other hand, and he said, near the last, one sentence she never told anybody else. "I see you, Lyra Ashen," he said. "I know," she said. "I always did." She lived another 31 years. She became, by the end, the thing the songs would eventually call the Grey Healer, though no song in her lifetime ever said her name out loud to her face, because she had told the ballad singers that if they did, she would stop treating their children for fever, and she had meant it. The small reason. The mean one. The one that carries you the furthest. She took in girls. She took in 2 or 3 at a time in the old ward, and she taught them to stitch and to mix and to read rooms, and a few of them, 2 in every decade maybe, turned out to carry something like what she carried, and she taught them too, the thing Vesa had taught her. To breathe, to listen, to set the line, to refuse the dais. One of them, a girl named Izen, a daughter of a charcoal burner from the Draven forest, asked her on the night before Lyra died what the lesson of the whole thing had been. Lyra, who was 83 years old and had been tired for a long time and was not afraid of being tired, thought about it for a minute. The lesson, she said, is that the world is going to tell you what you are, at some point. It will do it in a hall full of people if it can. It will make you say the words back. Nothing I tell you will stop that from happening. It happened to me. It will happen to you. What I can tell you is this. When they do it to you, do not go south. Go up. And when you come back down, do not come back as what they threw out. Come back as the thing they do not have a word for. And do not give them the word. She closed her eyes. Go to sleep, Izen, she said. Bank the fire. Latch the door. Tomorrow there will be patience. There are always patience. She slept. In the morning, the fire was low. The door was latched. Mother Lyra Ashen, who had once been called the rejected mate, and who had never been called it to her face in her own house, did not wake up. She was found sitting up in her chair with her old hand resting flat on her sternum, where she had been, all her life, in the habit of resting it. The warm thing was gone. It had gone, Izen understood, the way a lamp goes out. Not dramatically, not with a sound, just the absence of a light that had been there a long time, and the cool, clean dark taking its place. Izen latched the ward door, and she washed the old woman's face, and she went out into the gray dawn of the black spine to ring the bell. The town came. The town always came, for Mother Lyra. The bell rang 6 times, the way it rang for healers, not 12, the way it rang for alphas, and every old man and every young woman in Hollowreach knew which 6 strokes meant what. And they came out into the cold streets in their wool, and they stood, and they did not cheer. Because she had told them a long time ago not to cheer, and they did not weep much either, because she had taught them, over 60 years, that the small reasons were the ones that carried you the furthest. And the small reason today was that the kettle in the ward would need to be put on the fire, because the next shift of patients was already starting to come up the path, and Mother Lyra would have wanted the kettle on. The kettle went on, the ward opened, the work went on. And high up above the town, on the black shoulder of the black spine, where nobody went in winter, the wind came down through the high pass and found, somewhere in its cold, a small, warm thing it did not have a word for, and it carried the thing up and over the ridge and out and away into the rest of the world, which had always been larger than any one hall in any one city and which had always been waiting.